All right, start recording in three, two, and one. All right, and welcome back to the Reserve Squad Midweek Show, a soccer podcast covering all things in the EPL from a bench perspective. I'm your host, Ben, and this is your Week 14 EPL review show. And man, this weekend was maybe the best that we've seen so far this season. It seems like the last 3 weeks the EPL has given us uh, one of these games that I feel like will be remembered for multiple years, and we get another one with Spurs and Man City, and that'll be the game that I lead off with. But the Liverpool and Fulham game, equally memorable as well, and just a lot of headlines and a lot of like late drama. What was that happened this week? Sunday was bonkers just in general. Aston Villa and Bournemouth. Ollie Watkins got that late goal to get a nice draw at Bournemouth. So that was a 2-2 game. That was fun, and the Brighton and Chelsea game featured 5 goals as well, though a little controversy in that game as well, which I'll get into. Uh, but I will because I did have a lot of notes, so I don't want to necessarily read everything. I don't want it to be a 3 hour show. But I am going to get started with Man City and Tottenham, and probably spend the majority, at least the first part of it, first part of this, I guess, podcast, focusing on this because this really does tell the story a little bit of where maybe the season's going to go, both with Man City and Tottenham. And so I mean, it got started with really early, with Son. Son's been scoring on perhaps Man City teams over the last few times they've met. He does it again, and then he does it 2 times actually. He scores one for his side, and then scores one for Man City with the own goal. And then Phil Foden got the second for Man City, and this is the most like Pep like Man City like goal because the way Phil Foden scores it, playing as a right winger, but he's not really, he doesn't like being on the right side. He scores this in the middle of the field, and it's a beautiful little 1-2 combination. But, first started by Doku, and then he plays in Alvarez. Alvarez makes a really good run. He cuts in, and then feeds Foden for the goal. And basically, Man City scored something similar like this versus Leipzig for the third goal versus Leipzig. Uh, and really, the only surprise I think going into halftime was how was this game? How was City only leading up by a goal? I mean, it felt like Holland had to at least one pretty bad miss. Maybe you could argue two. They hit the post a couple of times. It was kind of stunning that Man City didn't score 4 or 5, maybe even 6 goals that first half. Spurs were just that cut open. But that said, when it wasn't showing up in the shots, because the shots was like 10-1. Spurs were getting a few times to get behind and to make things uncomfortable. There were a couple times with Kulishevsky and Brendan Johnson, but I think Brian Hill even had an effort, or at least a chance to cross something in, and it just didn't come off. But Spurs were still giving Pep some things to think about at halftime, and then we saw the change, and the change kind of that kind of did change the game. Brian Hill was doing some decent things. He had the turn that basically helped lead that first on goal, but he was also getting bullied a little bit off the ball. So basically, Ange Postecoglou made a pretty big change. He brought in Højbjerg, and basically Højbjerg and Basuma were kind of the two pivot, or the two in the midfield pivot. That allowed Lo Celso to have a little more of a free roll, a little further upfield. We see that show up for the goal, for the second goal. Uh, Another thing it did was it gave Brennan Johnson on the left side, and that gave Brennan Johnson was Kyle Walker was a little more of a contest. Kyle Walker was not able to bully Brennan Johnson, and Kyle Walker was afraid of Brennan Johnson, to be honest. And so, and a few times, basically, it seemed like Brennan Johnson was kind of asked to either handle Kyle Walker, or maybe drive Kyle Walker to maybe come closer to the ball and maybe slip in Udogi making a run in behind. We saw that a couple of times in the second half. So these were good changes by Pochettino, and it showed up. It showed up for the goal, and then Grealish gets the third for Man City, and Grealish didn't start the game. Jerry Doku actually had to go off early in the second half. Uh, I don't necessarily know how much that changed things, because Doku did have the great ball for the Foden goal, but for the most part, he was featured a lot. It seems like Man City just like doing this now. But I thought he was taking too long on the ball, to be honest. A couple of times he had a chance to play Holland in and just wasn't doing it. When Grealish came in, the first thing he did was look to try to get Holland in on a ball to maybe cross, get ahead on. Uh, so Grealish gets a second one. This came from Basuma trying to be a little too cute and clever, and he basically turns into trouble. He tries to beat Rodri, and that's not the best thing to do and turns in trouble. It's a turnover, and then I think it's Rico Lewis or Holland. Holland gets to play the ball, and Holland has a nice cutback to find Grealish. And then we end with 3-3 with Kulishevsky, and it's Brennan Johnson again. Brennan Johnson gets gets on the wing and sends a really good ball. And at this time, Richarlison has come on, and Richarlison is kind of basically drawing all the attention. Essentially, this is sometimes what having a striker can do. It just the presence alone creates a goal because Ruben Diaz is drawn to Richarlison. Richarlison's running near post, the ball goes over his head. But at that point, it's just Kulishevsky and Nathan Ake. And at the same time, you still think City are going to like that matchup, and Kulishevsky just beats Ake to a loose ball or to the ball in the air, and what a header this was. And then yeah, you had the controversy at the end when it looked like City were actually in on goal, and then Simon Hooper decided to blow the whistle. And I'll get to cover this a little bit more in depth, but that's kind of just like the rundown of what happened. The storyline really going into the game though was everyone knew that Tottenham were probably going to be vulnerable at the back because of what they looked like versus Aston Villa. And we saw basically the same lineup. We saw Pedro Porro, Royal, Ben Davies, who were not center backs, Udogi, and then Basuma and Lo Celso. So we saw Basuma back, and we were wondering how much that was going to change things because they didn't have him versus Aston Villa. And then we saw Brendan Johnson on track on the right. Kulishevsky was kind of like the 10 role, little Madison role, if you will. Then Brian Hill and then Son kind of ahead. Uh, when you look at this is crazy attack minded. I mean, there's Lo Celso in there that can maybe do a job in a pivot, but really he wants to get on the ball. He wants to be creative. It's just Basuma back there, and then you also have Udogi and Poro that really don't have a position, to be honest. And then you have Brian Heel. It's a front four, very attack minded front four, and it was a little too attack minded. And Brian Hill was kind of losing the ball. Lo Celso was losing the ball in that first half. And really, all of Man City's like real like big efforts honestly came from just Spurs losing the ball or being a little sloppy, being a little careless with it. Now they wanted to play the football. They didn't want to just go long. They didn't want to that's apparently just not how he thinks. They also play a very high line, and so you need people to have some recovery pace with them, especially if you're going against Holland. So that's the reason why he went with this kind of lineup. And it honestly, it could have blown up in their face. They could have been down again 5 or 6 goals at halftime. They weren't. Man City didn't make them pay. And after Hoiberg came on, they were just so much more comfortable playing from the back and being able to do what they wanted to do. They were able to draw Rodri to go forward, and they were to get behind him. They were using Son a little differently, the Kulishevsky a little differently. And to be honest, after about the 70th minute mark, it felt this game had out of nowhere really evened itself out. And so when it was 2-2, you were like, this is fair, this is even. And then Man City made some changes. Pep made some changes. Uh, had to take off Doku, and but really the interesting change was to take off Foden to bring on Rico Lewis. And one thing that basically he moved Bernardo Silva to almost be on the right side, but Rico Lewis actually made some pretty decent runs on that right side. He also did well to win the ball back a couple of times, and just he had some good energy and some good runs. Um, and the I guess another surprise was the Gvardiol played over Ake. Ake did so well versus Trent Alexander-Arnold, and it was interesting to see Gvardiol all of a sudden get a place instead. And Brennan Johnson kind of schooled him a little bit. This whole playing Kyle Walker as only a center back and not necessarily either a bombing fullback anymore. It has been weird. I think that's kind of shown up a little bit. And Rodri and Akanji is kind of this midfield pivot, just straight up. Akanji is not John Stones, and so Pep's trying to do basically the same things that won his team the treble last season. He doesn't have Kevin De Bruyne anymore. Doesn't have John Stones. It is a different team. He doesn't have Gundogan, and I think we're kind of showing that. I think that's showing up a little bit as well. Another thing that I'm starting to notice is Phil Foden and Alvarez together at the same time. Both are kind of like 10 players. Uh, Phil Foden just, he's not a right winger. He never really keeps with himself. Maybe he could play a little bit on the left and cut in, but that seems to be what Doku likes to do, and I think Doku's better at him than him at doing that. Grealish arguably is better than Foden and maybe doing that could maybe be a debate. I don't know about that, but Doku is. And so he perhaps trying to find a way to get Foden, in the squad. And last year he had someone like Mahrez, especially in these like kind of big games where Mahrez would have been able to keep some width, but also beat a man 1v1. And it's been interesting to see. I just feel like Man City have been a little imbalanced this season, and 'cause you see what Doku offers on one side, they don't have that on the right side, especially when you don't have Walker doing overlaps to help someone like Phil Foden. And Pep doesn't like doing that anymore because he's so worried about teams kind of countering on them. And what's funny enough is Spurs were still able to counter on them. So there you go. Um, I mean, I have a chance for Man City in the 5th minute. It's just a shot that Doku has. It's saved, but it comes from but the corner kick comes from City basically winning the ball off a Spurs player high in their own end, and that really is a theme in the first half. And then we get to the first goal. It comes off Man City's corner kick. Vicario stops the cross, so he does really well there. And then Spurs do well to break up field. So it's a nice spin move by Brian Hill. Like I mentioned, he didn't do much in the game, but he was good here. He's able to find Kulishevsky, then the ball, and Kulishevsky sees that Doku is running with Son and sees it's a mismatch and plays a 50-50 ball for Son to run onto. And Son beats Doku. And then, from there, Son's able to run at Ederson because there's no one else for cover. Because it is a Man City corner kick, so they have all their big boys in the box, and that's kind of so when you don't score on the corner kick, you can leave yourself a little vulnerable. Brighton kind of experienced that too when I get to their game. But another thing I was thinking about is this is very funny because it felt like had Allison not slipped, this is kind of the goal, or this is kind of situation that Liverpool had versus Man City before Man City got their goal last week. Because Allison is trying to play Salah the ball, and it looks like Salah had beaten Doku, and there's no one else because it was also on a Man City corner kick, and it seemed City could have gotten undone by last week on something similar, and this Allison slipped last time. This time Spurs got the passes right. And Son 1v1 with Ederson, and he basically powers it through Ederson. Pep, Son likes scoring against Pep, I guess is kind of say, and maybe too much, or he likes scoring too much in this little contest because he gets the own goal. So the joy and the fun is short lived. Spurs again are really sloppy on the ball, and I think it's either Udogi, maybe he's trying to find Ryan Hill, but he like passed it out of bounds, and then it's a throw in, and then Lo Celso fouls Bernardo Silva. So cheap free kick to give up. And then Man City, I think it's Alvarez, really good delivery in, and I think it kind of deflects in front of Son, and then Son has his like thigh raised up or knee raised up. He's facing the goal. It's not really the way you want to be facing, especially your attacking player, and it just deflects in. And but from there, this game really could have gotten away. I have in the 13th minute, I have another. This is the Holland chance. So it happened really early in the game. And it's a theme of the first half. Really, Spurs are trying to play from the back, and they're trying to punish City pressing them, but they keep making mistakes. Here, Royal gets the ball pitched off him by Bernardo Silva, and there's just a square ball to Holland, 8 yards from goal, and he just drags it wide. So I mean, he didn't even have to hit for the corner just because of the positioning he was. Just if he hits this hard and central, it goes in. So I mean, people are allowed to miss, but it was just shocking that he did. There was a chance though for Spurs, one of the few after the Son goal with Brendan Johnson. So the few moments that they were able to play from the back, they were able to give Pep's team a scare. And here Poor is able to get the ball, and he tries the ball over the top. That Brendan Johnson decides to take Gvardiol on because Brendan Johnson has started on the right side in this game, and basically Doc walks him. He has Gvardiol on a bit of a leash, and the square ball nearly causes a real issue. Ruben Diaz does a really good job to actually keep this from maybe finding Zon for a tap in. But Ruben Diaz almost hits it into his own net. But that was really the only real danger moment that Spurs had in the second half as far as clear cut chances. They did get in behind a couple of other times, but I'll get into that later. And then it really was just Man City. So here's Jeremy Doku a crossbar challenge. So Spurs lose the ball again. This time it's higher upfield, but Lo Celso is too weak on the ball. And City find Foden in space. And then Foden plays it to Alvarez. Alvarez finds Doku. And Doku cuts inside to go past Ben Davies. You don't really want Ben Davies to be 1v1 with Doku. But this happens because this is when it happens when you lose the ball. The other team, maybe someone like Poro is trying to be maybe an outlet forward because of the way that they're playing fullbacks differently. They're trying to basically make a numbers advantage in midfield. And here, Poor's played out of the play, and Ben Davies has to go 1v1, has to slide over to help out with with Doku, and it's pretty rough. Doku cuts in and gets a really good shot off, and he's just beaten by the crossbar. And then I have a chance here, I guess, with Doku not crossing it, but it doesn't really matter because they scored like a couple of seconds later. But I just want to highlight this. Uh, Doku, it seemed like anytime City were looking to attack, they were trying to get the ball to Doku again. We saw that versus the Liverpool game. And here, I think it's the second time I have just kind of doing notes where Holland is just kind of looking at Ben Davies and just sizing him up. Holland is begging for a cross to come in, and Doku instead holds on to the ball. And he plays it backwards to Gvardiol eventually. And Gvardiol tries to send the ball in, but by that time it's too late, and also the pass is kind of weak, and the Spurs are able to head it away, but they aren't able to get it to win the ball back, essentially. So it doesn't really matter because Foden basically scores a minute after this, so Man City are just able to keep, winning the ball back. Alvarez wins a 50-50 header. I think Rodri steps up and wins the ball back, or maybe Gvardiol. And eventually Doku gets the ball again, and this time he sees Alvarez making a run ahead or kind of just splitting everyone. Because again, the attention's drawn on Holland, so Alvarez basically runs behind him, and no one follows him. Ben Davies tries to at the last minute, but all that does is Ben Davies plays everyone else on sides after Alvarez gets the ball, and Alvarez is able to quickly cut in and sees Foden, easy square pass to Foden, and Foden has a really nice finish to finish off the game. And this is just like a Man City type goal when you think about them just kind of walking it in. Pep doesn't like playing necessarily with attacking, winging. Well, other than Toku, I guess. In the past, Pep hasn't liked playing with like attack minded kind of wingers. He likes just everyone to kind of just be like a midfield eight and just be really creative in the box. And here is just kind of the perfect embodiment of that. And then Man City, strike the post with Alvarez, and again, it felt like this was on the verge of being a blowout, because again, Spurs' only shot at this point is the Son goal, and they keep trying to play from the back with Royal, and it's not coming off. He's leading to mistakes, and it's another poor giveaway again. And City played in on a break. They find Alvarez, and Alvarez has a pop. Alvarez maybe could have tried to do Foden, but Foden's making a pretty good run in front of him, but he goes for himself, and it's a good shot. I mean, it beats Vicario, and he's just denied by the paint of the woodwork. And then the other big chance to Holland happened in the 40th minute, and he just blows this one over the bar. Um, and here it's another again, it's another sloppy Spurs turnover, and I think it's either Basuma or someone just it gets caught by Rodri and Alvarez kind of double teaming him, and it's a near disaster because this happens again really high up in the Spurs end, and it's just kind of I think it's Alvarez. Alvarez has just a last ditch kind of like lunge to get the ball to Holland, in the box, maybe 10 yards away from goal, and he just balloons it over. Now he has to take this. He has to hit this quickly because this time there actually is someone in front of him. So it's just his kind of rushing to do this, and he just gets under the ball. But it was a big chance. It was a chance, and so we get to halftime, and again, all the commentary was like, "Wow, are Spurs really lucky to still be in this?" And I think that was kind of the general sense of it as well. And again, going into this game, you had to remember that Spurs were not able to field traditional center backs, and this game really could have been 4 or 5 or 6 to Man City. But the thing to really highlight is all these chances came from not necessarily City you know, beating, not necessarily Ben Davies and Emerson Royal being poor man marking or defending in the box. It was more just kind of getting caught on the ball, having bad giveaways in costly areas, and the shots were 10-1. But at the same time, it felt like Spurs had more than one danger moment, with Kulishevsky, Brian Hill, and et cetera. So they were still able to get behind, and it's just the final touch or a pass was off. And so we did see some early changes though. Uh, as I mentioned, Brian Hill off, Hoiberg on, basically midfielder to have a little more security. And Ange basically moved Lo Celso into like the Madison role and Kulishevsky into the right wing role. So Kulishevsky had a different role and this was to help anytime with transitions. Um, but it was also Hoiberg and Basuma. It gave them two, where they didn't necessarily have that before, and basically what you see in this kind of second like 10-minute stretch. So Hoiberg comes on and he changes their build up, their build up play, and they're not turning the ball over nearly enough. I mean, or nearly as much. So they flipped the possession stats. In fact, Vicario is helping out with this too. He's able to find a Spurs player more, and City aren't winning the ball back nearly as much because the keeper isn't just booting things away. That is going to be a theme that I'll highlight later on. There was an early Man City chance though with Vicario kind of making a mistake, so he does make a save, but yeah, I almost ate my words. At least doing these notes in real time. Uh, it is a really bad giveaway by Vicario. I think he passes it right to Alvarez or Bernardo Silva. Holland has a chance here, and he basically maybe the misses were in his head, so he passes it backwards to Bernardo Silva, and Bernardo Silva has a good crack. But it's a harder effort for Bernardo Silva. So it was interesting that Holland didn't actually take the chance. It's a good shot. It requires a really good save, and Vicario has a really good save. Um, and then after Grealish came on for Doku, we have a chance in the 54th minute where basically it's his first touch, and he basically the first thing he wants to do is try to find Holland on a good delivery end where Holland has a chance to get a header on it, and he just misses. But we didn't see Doku do this. I thought that was kind of interesting. And then there's a chance for Spurs, and it's the second time they actually make Ederson work a little bit. Comes in the 54th minute, and here they're able to keep the ball a little bit. They're able to find Lo Celso in some dangerous areas. Everything looks different with Pedro Porro is able to get Spurs out of some danger moments. He's have some really good passes to basically unlock Man City's team in midfield. But you're also starting to see them create a couple looks for Brennan Johnson running free upfield. And I've seen another thing they were trying to do was they were trying to bait Kyle Walker to sometimes follow Brennan Johnson to have maybe Udogi making a run in behind him. And in the 15th minute, you really see what they're trying to do. So they're trying to drive Rodri to come upfield, and so they can basically exploit that space that he would figuratively leave with someone like a Son or Kulishevsky. To basically create a little basically 3v3 situation with their center backs with people like Son and Kulishevsky in a transition moment. So here in the 50th minute, Lo Celso drops the ball and Rodri nearly fouls him in the penalty area. So you see it's kind of working. And there is a mistake here by Ben Davies, so it was almost a disaster. But Basuma does well to snuff out the fire. And you basically, I think that little moment kind of affected how Spurs approached the rest of the half. Another thing you see is the balls that Pedro Porro is playing to get out of trouble when he looks like he's closed down in the sideline were really, really brilliant. And from the 52nd minute to I guess the 70th or 68th before the goal came, Spurs have flipped everything entirely. Spurs had something like 31% possession in the first half. From this little 10-minute stretch, they have 70% of the ball, and they're winning the 50-50 duels. Basuma's doing well in that. Hoiberg has come in and won some duels to win the ball back. And Udogi still is making his free runs to make things hard for City. Pedro Porro is just popping up in pockets everywhere to be an outlet. Uh, and City can't win the ball back. And Spurs are basically finding these three-man passing triangles that they were missing in the first half. You also see Son dropping deeper to be an outlet for the ball with Brendan Johnson staying higher. I thought Brasuma was better in possession, so that helped out in this little stretch. Horberg, I thought, was offering some pretty good security, but there were a couple of times when I really did freeze frame the screen, and I could count City basically having five to press six or seven when you include the keeper Vicario, and just it seems City were very more defensive minded and wary of the counterattack in the second half. I think that maybe put them off a little bit. It was very interesting to see basically Pochettino not change, not shy away with what he wanted to do, and yeah, it showed up in the goal. So again, given how the way the first half went, this did come by surprise, but given the way that little stretch that I talked about went, it felt deserved. And here, Man City being sloppy. So that's fitting as well. So Alvarez basically has a chance to flick a ball towards Holland, but it's like a 50-50. It's high in the air, and Ben Davies does well to recognize he can maybe win this ball high upfield. He takes a gamble, and it works. I mean, if he gets this wrong, Holland has, he has a free run to just basically run at Vicaria. No one's going to catch him. But Davies does win the ball, and he heads it to Son, so that's good too. He's able to pick out Son, and then Son quickly finds Lo Celso. Son also makes a pretty good run, and that drives someone to follow him, and so Lo Celso cuts towards goal, and Ruben Diaz is just too late to react a little bit, and Man City are just too late to close down, and Lo Celso picks out the far corner and kisses it off the post, beating Ederson. And it's 2 goals in 2 games for Giovanni Lo Celso, and he had a different role I thought in the second half. Played a little bit more advanced, and with the changes that Pochettino made, it paid off here. Again, I did feel like they were deserved to be level, and I did feel like as the game kind of went on, it felt like maybe Man City were struggling to not having Doku to be an outlet, because it seemed like they weren't able to keep the ball nearly as much. And then there is a chance here in the 74th for Rodri. So here Rico Lewis has since come on as a sub, and Spurs are caught on the ball. Rico Lewis then makes a really good run into the box, and a cutback ball finds Rodri, and Rodri hits it over the net. We've seen Rodri sometimes be show up and get some key goals from Man City. And here, just any kind of contact, it probably is going to trouble Vicario, but he doesn't get his feet right, and he just balloons it over. But it doesn't matter because Man City do get the third with Grealish, and again, Basuma had a weird game. He wasn't spectacular, but he wasn't nearly as bad as what I'm hearing. People, what I've at least seen online. People really going at him. He had a horrible error here, but for the most part, and he wasn't great in the first half. But in the second half, he was pretty good, and he was important to what they were trying to do. So I just want to put that out there. But here, he's not really put in the best situation either. There's just I think it's Emerson Royal, just kind of loops the ball, in the middle of the field, and he has to collect this. He does a good job to actually collect this, and then he turns, and it looks like he's got an easy pass to Udogie, and he's going to get out of this, and then he decides to instead turn around. And he sees Rodri, and he tries to maybe nutmeg him at the last second, and just Rodri is helps win the ball back, and then from there, City are in. And then I think Rico Lewis gets it and plays in Holland. Holland makes a good run on the right side, and Holland, instead of maybe taking the chance on himself, he does really good job to see that Grealish is in the box, and he's kind of open, and Holland has a really nice cutback ball to find Grealish, and Grealish does well to finish as well. And then Richarlison came on. So in the 90th minute or so, 85th minute, they Pochettino said that Richarlison would be available, but he wouldn't be fit for more than 5 minutes, and maybe that was all they needed. Spurs do get the third goal in the 90th minute with Kulishevsky, and again, it did feel like it was a fitting end to just an absolute bonkers game. So here, Oliver Skip has come on for Tottenham, and he does really well here because he Hoiberg kind of plays him into no man's land, plays him into danger. Even rewatching this, I was like, oh wow, I'm expecting City to absolutely win the ball here, and he does a really good job to first avoid Holland and then Rico Lewis because they're both by Oliver Skip. So Skip has shows some really good metal here, to not freak out and to actually show some pretty good touch. Because anything heavy, it's probably a turnover, and maybe it's Man City getting the other goal. So Skip does really well here, and then after beating those two, he's able to find Son. So he keeps his head up, and he finds Son, and then Son finds Brennan Johnson, and then Brennan Johnson shows really good wing play. He takes on Kyle Walker, beats him, and then gets the cross off, and it's a good cross. It's an inviting ball, and at this point, like I said, Richarlison has come on, and he's drawing all the attention. Ruben Diaz runs to him, and at that point, that leaves Kulishevsky with just Nathan Ake. And Ake is beaten with Kulishevsky just kind of coming in from behind him and maybe surprising him and either using his head or shoulder to power this in with Ederson having no chance. It just kisses off the crossbar. And then when it looks like that was going to be all the talking points, we do get the situation with Jack Grealish and Simon Hooper blows the play dead after what was a late foul. Holland is completely taken out. Spurs are trying to actually go win this game. There's a cross sent in. It looks like they maybe have a chance to win this. And Brennan Johnson has just the worst touch in the world. I don't know if he's trying to collect it. Maybe he's trying to pass someone else, but it's just a horrible touch. And Man City are actually the team that are able to quickly counter. And everyone in on the Spurs team is within like the halfway line, so no one is offsides. Holland's able to just do an easy ball for Jack Grealish to run onto, and Grealish has a couple steps ahead. And maybe I'm thinking Ben Davies can close down enough to maybe catch him and bring him down before he's able to get to Vicario. I do think it's going to be close. So maybe they just eat a red card and that's just it. But it was crazy how Simon Hooper first decided to let the play go on, and then maybe he just assumed after Holland played it forward, he didn't see Jack Grealish and just figured, oh well, he's just giving the ball away, so I'm gonna give City the free kick. But it's an absolute howler, and this is the same ref that gave that I think should have been disciplined after the Spurs Liverpool game. I felt like he didn't have a good game without the VAR and with the VAR controversy because everyone remembers the offside goal not being called. There should have been disciplinary action for the VAR officials that day, and it should have been. I felt like the way Diego Jota was sent off, the way that Curtis Jones was. I I was surprised that at least there wasn't something about him. And here again, he's refing a big game, and funny enough, these two games that he's refed have actually gone to Spurs' favor. That's interesting as well. Not gonna go into conspiracy theories, but that's just when you have someone making a mistake and you don't discipline them, it's going to happen again, and here it did. Maybe it wouldn't have changed the outcome, but who knows? I mean, there is some what ifs there. But that's that is what it is. There were other such times for City to win this game, so I'm not really going to hype on it that much. It doesn't take away from how good this game was, and really, I can't I can't remember a team that went to the Etihad and out footballed City. And that's what Tottenham did in the second half. Tottenham ended the game with 49% to 51 possession, but that's because I think they had close to 60% in the second half. They just entirely flipped things around. It looks like they found a little vulnerability. They Man City had or have been praised this season for their ability to win the ball back. They're counter pressing. But usually what they're doing is they're trying to get the ball to go back to the keeper, and then they press the keeper, and then the ball goes long, and they have all six center backs essentially, and they win the ball because they have the physical advantage elsewhere on the field. Vicario was not going long. He only went long 9 times this game, and that'll be another thing I touch on. And just the way Spurs were able to just keep the ball in the second half changed things entirely, and that'll be basically the theme of the rest of the game. XG was 2.5 for Man City, point 0.4 for Tottenham. Only 8 shots and 4 on target. Man City was 17 and 4, 6 shots in the second half there for Man City. It was entirely flipped. 4 big chances though. So you can't say that. I mean, they did have 500 passes and 88% accuracy. Spurs 400, so Spurs were definitely lower than what they've been. But I want to touch on the long balls. Man City was 45 for 64. Tottenham was 9 for 30. And so they only tried 30 for the entire game, and their keeper only did it 9 times. So I will start with Tottenham. So I mean, a theme I think I'm going to spend or highlight a little bit and spend some time on. It will be a word that I think another other analysts or whatever will use, and the word is brave because Spurs were so much different in the second half. And it just everyone from Son to the keeper were just braver on the ball. They weren't afraid of losing it. And I feel like that was maybe kind of a situation in the first half where maybe they were a little hesitant to try to play a quick pass into the middle of the field for fear of like you don't want to lose it into the middle of the field. So they were trying to go backwards and just kind of playing themselves into some danger. But I mean, just everything. There's so many positives to hit on. Son scoring like he always seems to do. Kulishevsky didn't just dunk on Ake. He did well on Gvardiol after the change, and just him moving to the right. He was asked to do a different role and still impacted the game. Brennan Johnson had a good game, especially in the second half. His acceptance to play without the ball, um, and just to be a player to just kind of keep with and to stretch back lines. Essentially, he wasn't allowing Kyle Walker to leave him. And maybe he screwed up a little bit with that bad back touch, but he really did come alive in the second half when he was basically when he switched sides from being the right wing to the left wing, and then really everything about the Spurs team starts and ends with Pedro Porro and Destiny Udogie. And it's unique in how they're being asked to play, but it's like it doesn't feel like they are uh, it doesn't like there's a different manager who would be better suited, for them. So they help give Spurs a numbers advantage in midfield, and City just couldn't really cope with it. And these games or these big games with these kind of teams are legacy defining, for players. And both Power and Adogi are putting themselves in an elite category. With a performance like this, I mean, the game has changed. It being a fullback isn't just about defending the wide areas anymore. Um, and these are two of the most modern day fullbacks playing right now. And again, they're playing for the perfect manager. The changes that Pochettino made in the second half, Mullin, Kulusevski out wide, Lo Celso the 10, Hoiberg, bringing Hoiberg and Basuma, making that the pivot, allowing Brendan Johnson to stay higher up. Just all of it was good. It was good for them to have Richarlison back, and I think he actually did have an effect a little bit. And Ben Davies and Emerson Royal played their heart out in the second half. But both had a lot more aggression jumping in front of balls. And Royal had a rough go of it in the first half. I thought he was much better in the second half when he wasn't asked to necessarily be on the ball nearly as much, and just kind of his role was to do a little more defending. So that was good, and you see why they were picked. I mean, they're picked for their recovery pace, because you can't. And the reason why you have to have, I want to touch on this. The reason why he is, the manager of Spurs is so reliant on playing with a high line is because you can't play a Pedro Porro or a Dogi the way that they're playing without doing a high line. You can't have center backs that are playing, low in field with only two, where your fullbacks are completely, way upfield. You have to be compact, and this way. With the high line, so it allows Basuma to cut in, or Lo Celso or Horberg to drop into that either that center back or that fullback role in that high line. And so that the high line is everything. That's the reason when with the high line you have to have recovery pace, especially with someone like Holland. So that is the reason why these players were picked. Also, it kind of worked out because the way that City were kind of getting the ball either to Doku or someone out wide, it was asking, when say, Spurs were losing the ball, when Ben Davies had to go out and defend, he wasn't really defending Holland. He was having to go out and defend the wide areas anyways, which is a fullback role. So it weirdly worked out. But that said, it almost didn't in the first half. And Basuma deserves a little praise. I mean, it's yikes for the giveaway, and he did have a couple bad giveaways in the first half too. And sometimes you can be too brave on the ball, but so I mean, there is risk that comes with the reward. Uh, but he had some good moments, and there are a few times when Vicario was looking to quickly find that third person in a triangle. Vicario was looking for Bissouma, and Bissouma was doing really well to be that option. So he didn't have the horde game that everyone is trying to go at. He didn't win many duels, but he's up against Rodri. That is just what it is. But one other thing to highlight is given how the first 30 minutes went, my prediction of the game was like, I think Son will have a hat trick, but Man City win because they'll score 7 goals. It didn't feel like it was going to be that bad of a prediction. But it is crazy how they were able to. And again, it is because of the injuries at the back end. Uh, but it was just I was not, and I think everyone was kind of trying. Everyone that had a similar prediction was trying to just kind of double down and dunk on that at halftime. And then again, everything just changed in the second half. The shape changed when they had 70% of the ball for a large part of that second half. The shape entirely changed. They were more compact with the three midfield. Kulishevsky, I thought, was offering better ball security on the right side. Pedro Porro just straight balled out in the second half in a way that just I don't think anyone was expecting. The types of balls he was playing to escape pressure and still find feet and basically undress Man City in moments. He was able to locate maybe some areas on the field where maybe there wasn't even a Spurs player there, but there wasn't a Man City player there. So he was just playing that. into like places on the field where someone could run at to get the ball, and it's just he was a big reason why that possession thing changed. And just they had the passing, they had the vision that they were lacking in the first half, but and the result of that was fewer turnovers, so there was fewer moments for Man City to win the ball back in dangerous areas. So that's the reason why they had much fewer shots. And one thing I really like about the coach is because he was asked about what he maybe addressed at halftime. People were wondering, oh, maybe surely you rented your players a little bit, and he basically said. Uh, I just want my players to believe in themselves, and basically he just said, "If you make a mistake, I'll own it. That's on you." So he was even asked about Basuma, and he brought up how he liked some of the things that Basuma did that he approved of. So players have to love playing for this guy, and that is showing too. And again, it's not just being brave on the ball, it is brave to play your fullbacks, this way, but it's not really done in a reckless way. It seems like there is instruction and structure. So when Dogi does kinda leave his fullback spot, Lo Celso or Basuma stay behind. Maybe it's Ben Davies switching over out wide. It seemed like Tottenham still had 4 in a back line. It was very high, but it seemed like Tottenham would never just, 2v2 or 1v1 with Holland at the back end. And the last one I want to touch on is when you speak about bravery, what Vicario was doing was very brave. Uh, and if I would have been a Spurs fan watching this live, would have given me heartburn. Some of the chances and balls that he was passing, because he was doing blind passes right in front of his own goal, where a Man City player was in the box. But he trusted someone like a Basuma or Horberg to make a decision when someone was on his shoulder, and just the way it seemed like Man City were pressing to get him the ball, and then he wasn't giving it to them back. He was finding feet. So he was doing well to really find teammates, and that was important. And you talk about bravery. That this is basically what Pep has done with Ederson. You can't really, in a way, this Vicario player is a weapon. Where if you keep the ball, you can control the game essentially. He had 60 touches and only 12 long ball attempts. I said 9, so it's 12 long ball attempts, and he wasn't the most accurate passing. But for 60 touches is a lot for a keeper. So I mean, Ederson had a similar number of touches. He had like a 90% pass accuracy, so better on the ball. But this is you're not used to seeing teams do this at the Etihad to Man City, and teams don't have keepers that like Vicario. And he's definitely worthy. I mentioned of the legacy. This was a legacy kind of game for him too. He had a great save on Bernardo Silva too. He had that one. He had the bad pass there as well, so he needed to make that save, but he did. And again, this could have been 5 or 6 from Man City just at the halftime. So there is that kind of component to it as well. And then speaking of Man City, it really was a mix of them not really taking their chances in the first half, and then but really in the second half, when Man City did have the ball and did have an attack going, more times than not, there was just no ruthlessness to them. It was slow. Whether it was Foden or Grealish, it just seemed they had the thought to recycle and go backwards. It was never really forwards. No one was ever trying to play Holland in. No one was trying to do just a cross for Holland. No one was trying to just take the game under control essentially. So there weren't really a lot of positives, weirdly enough to say. Well, at least focusing on the second half. And one positive I did have was Rico Lewis came on and inserted some directness and play to his game, and it nearly helped it. It helped with that Grealish goal, and it nearly helped for that Rodri goal. And then Foden scored a brilliant goal, but I don't really know. And he scored a great goal for in that Leipzig game, but I don't really know what he is as a player, and I feel like that's starting to be a problem. And when you get Kevin De Bruyne back, he's not really a wide player either. Maybe Alvarez is the one that gets shown the door. You're going to have to be able to play Kevin De Bruyne, especially in these big kind of games. So, well, I don't really know how this all of a sudden this Man City team feels imbalanced. Now they can still go on to win the league. Uh, but that said, it just they don't really have a white winger, and it seems they have just too many of the same kind of player. I mean, I don't really think Alvarez is a midfielder. He's being asked to play there, and he's not doing a terrible job. But I feel like he's a second striker, and just like they don't really have a way to really uh, get the best out of Alvarez and Foden at the same time to me, and I don't really know how you fit Kevin De Bruyne in there as well. And then the negatives and concerns is because of what happened in the second half. Grealish picked up a kind of stupid yellow, and then Rodri is going to be out for Aston Villa for a yellow card suspension as well. So not going to have two of them for Aston Villa. It's away at Aston Villa. Villa has been as good as any home ground since Unai Emery has shown up there. That's not going to be an easy game. Just in general, if you had a full squad, not going to have. Well, it looks like Doku maybe won't be able to go. So I don't know what that's going to do for options. We've seen, Man City not have Rodri for a couple of games, and they dropped points. They dropped points to Arsenal and dropped points to Wolves. So, and speaking of Rodri, I feel like there are 3 games now in a row where Chelsea, Liverpool, and Spurs found ways to bait Rodri and leave his holding area, get him higher upfield, and get a ball behind him. And I feel like Pep's playing him 90 minutes every single game, even in Champions League games. He's never doing any rotation, never subbing, and that's the minutes are probably starting to show. So maybe we'll see Kovacic number 6 versus Aston Villa. I don't know. It seems like Kovacic is ready to go. But again, it feels like to me they're in balance. And I mentioned how I've mentioned they've been missing Kevin De Bruyne, maybe a Gundogan, Cancelo. I do feel like they're maybe missing what Mahrez was offering last season. Um, and then, yeah, Holland had the missed chances, but I feel like he's almost ejected because he's making great runs. We watched the game, and you can count so many times when you're like, you can just play him in. He's got Ben Davies. He's going to beat him if the ball is right. Things like that, and they're just not doing it. And it's just the one player that actually was trying to play him in was Grealish. So I don't know. That is very weird. It's almost Doku does a lot of good things, but it's just very weird how he's instructed not to play that 50-50 ball maybe because you can potentially lose it until you get into the box. And then again, Doku is just kind of waiting to play men. And that's crazy to say because again, Holland scores a goal a game essentially. So I think Holland will celebrate having Kevin De Bruyne back. De Bruyne won't care what Pep is trying to coach. If he sees a run is on, he'll play it. So Holland's goal attempts or goals per game will undoubtedly go up when Kevin De Bruyne shows up. But another thing to focus on is one I think take I had in the beginning of the season that has really aged poorly is I was wondering, are City going to have, are they going to set records with their defense? Because they brought in Gvardiol, they already had Stones. You were like, well, maybe they're going to play like 4 or 5 center backs on the field at the same time. They've given up 10 goals in 3 games, and getting Kevin De Bruyne back alone doesn't fix that. Maybe John Stones, maybe he does. Maybe he changes things a little bit better. Him and Rodri will be a different midfield pivot. Uh, but that is something to maybe think about as well. But it's not all terrible. The game for Aston Villa is not going to be easy, but they don't play. They basically play a bunch of bottom teams until early January when they have Newcastle, so they have a chance to still win a bunch of points, probably still be, top of the table come January. So it's not all necessarily doom and gloom. And then you have the Hooper decision, so maybe they could have even won the game. Given how just the way that they were flying in the first half, it probably would be a surprise. It probably is surprising that this ended up actually just being a draw. Uh, but, more so than that, I think it's interesting that they were just it wasn't like Spurs, got a couple goals, against the run of play. No, they were actually controlling that entire nearly that entire second half, or at least for large parts of that second half. They were deserving, and Man City were played off their own pitch, in that second half in some respects. So, just absolutely crazy and brilliant for Spurs, brilliant for this coach to come in and people want to just downplay Spurs because of people like saying the word Spursy and whatnot. I don't think they have enough. I don't think they have enough with depth, especially at center back. I don't think you can necessarily do this for a long stretch. They're going to get Christian Romero back after this game. He was only suspended for 3 games because of that red card, so that'll definitely help. But I do think they're going to absolutely need to go into January and bring in some defensive security. No doubt about that. I don't know if necessarily they even need to look at striker. But these aren't necessarily the type of games that really shows up. It'd be like those teams when maybe I don't know, maybe with Richarlison back it doesn't really matter, but it would be the teams when how can you if you go up against like maybe a deep block, a well positioned deep block, and maybe it's like the 89th minute in the game. Is Son and Kulishevsky, is that enough to maybe get you a goal that you absolutely have to have? That's just to something as far as challenge for a league. I do think they stay healthy, relatively healthy. They have a Champions League spot for them. Anyways, I've already spoken enough about that game, and I'll move on to Arsenal and Wolves. Probably won't spend nearly as much time on this because not a ton happened, though the 2 goals were absolutely brilliant. Uh, so first from Saka and Odegaard, and then Cunha. Actually, all 3 goals were brilliant. It was interesting to see Havertz back on the bench, and the way how Arsenal started this game, because both the Saka and Odegaard goals happened in I think the first like 15 minutes. You're wondering, is Arsenal about to do what they just did to Lens, where they're going to score 5 in the first half? And in a weird way, Wolves are starting off really poor. We're able to get a little more secure, and by the again, it was very similar to I don't say very similar. But by the 45th minute or so, you thought, yeah, maybe 2-1. It's not that bad. They were able to retake control a little bit in the in that towards from the 20th minute on to halftime. And given the way how the second half went, another take I had was this game weirdly felt very similar to me to what Wolves did versus Tottenham a few weeks back. If you guys remember that, where Spurs had the early goal, and then they weren't able to necessarily get that second one, and then the one change I guess I could say is Wolves actually peppered Tottenham in that second half. Arsenal weren't necessarily peppered, but they were starting to get some scares, and because Arsenal weren't necessarily able to get that killer goal, they had moments. Trossard had a miss. I think everyone's going to focus on the Nketiah miss, unfortunately, for the kid. But they never really came, and then watch Cunha got the got his. There was a 10-minute stretch where this wasn't necessarily as comfortable for Arsenal as maybe people would have, or Arsenal fans would have wanted. But they still win, and that's all that really matters. So I will start on the first goal with Saka, and it looks like Wolves are in good position here. There are 2 players tight on Saka, and he still finds a way to slip something between them. Gabriel Jesus then shows real good skill here because he's holding off Tati Gomez, who's not a bad center back at all. And when he receives the ball, and he still has, and he's still able to kind of slide something away from a second Wolves player joining in, and he's able to find spins on it and finds Tomiyasu, and then Tomiyasu one times it to Saka, who continued his run to the box, and then from there Saka evades Craig Dawson and then fires one into the bottom corner. It's really good by Saka gets the goal, but it's really good by what Jesus does here. And then I have in the 10th minute, there's a good tackle by Rice, and then Odegaard tries to play in Saka, but just kind of overhits it. One theme I want to talk on with Arsenal, I've kind of dogged him in some games. This is maybe the best I've seen Declan Rice. So he's worth some praise this game, and they Arsenal do get the early second with Odegaard, uh, and just the Zinchenko and Jesus show in this one. It starts with Saka actually having the ball on the right side, and he takes on Hugo Breno. Gets to the byline and sends the ball over the goal and finds Zinchenko, and then there's a really nice one too with Zinchenko and Jesus, where Jesus immediately passes it back. He has really good first touch to play Zinchenko in, and then Zinchenko does well to have a cutback ball that finds Odegaard, and it's just Odegaard passes it into the corner of the far net. But it's just kind of this quick one-touch passing in tight areas. This is what Arsenal were last season, and it's been missing this season. And another thing I want to say, Jesus has missed a lot of this season, so that could be some of it. Um, the Zinchenko run, he makes a run from out wide. This is what Shaka was doing for them last season. This is not Zinchenko was not really a midfielder this game. He was kind of a traditional fullback. I don't really know if Arteta asked him to play differently, It wasn't bad. He wasn't nearly as inverted. It also felt like Arsenal had the midfield advantage, so maybe they just didn't need it this game. But it was that little run kind of created all this, so it was good by Zinchenko. Uh, and then good by Gabriel Jesus to have two really good goal involvements in the penalty area. Sometimes I feel like he's too far out of it. But again, you're wondering, is Arsenal about to is Wolves about to get blitzed here? And then, because they had another chance, Trossard here, and the chance to really blow the game open. Jose Sa is already struggling with an injury. The commentators are talking about it, and Odegaard just floats the ball into the penalty area. I think he's trying to pick out Jesus, but Trossard basically steals it for himself and has a tremendous first touch and to settle this. And then he's about to fire it, and Jose Sa makes a brave save to stop to run out and stop this going in. Hurts and all, and he does. He basically saves a goal and saves this game from being blown out. He has to go off after this though, and then Martinelli basically hit the post, and Arsenal could do no wrong in the first half except maybe here. No field tilt nonsense. That's something I wanted to kind of because I mentioned it last week. Arsenal have the run. They were actually there was some transition moments in that first half, and here they just couldn't make it count. Martinelli gets the ball from Saka. He cuts inside and tries to curl one in and just kind of hits the post. Uh, and then I want to say from the 25th minute on to basically the end of the second half, Wolves grew into the game a little bit. And then right before halftime, Raya had to make a save. Arsenal switched off. Wang looked like he had maybe Saliba and Gabriel beaten, and Raya does really good to come out, and it is a warning sign. And then I have a couple of moments for Arsenal in the second half. There's one with Jesus, and Gabriel Jesus has a good game, but it's stuff like this where I feel like it maybe is his downfall. Tomiyasu plays a great cross, and this is just begging for someone to throw their body at essentially. And Jesus either mistimes his jump or is he basically he's trying to claim like he's being fouled, but I think he's worried about the keeper being close to him and maybe clattering into him a little bit. Uh, it's a fantastic delivery by Tomiyasu though, and Jesus had a chance later on in the game where this one was a little harsher because it came to him quickly. But there was another ball sent in where I think it was either Gabriel, the center back. He mistimed his header, and then the rebound fell to Jesus, and he couldn't keep the ball down. He basically he looks like he's maybe going out of bounds, and the angle was tight. But Jesus also had a chance there. Uh, but we do one thing I want to highlight is by the 52nd minute, there's a chance for Cunha, and he forces another Raya save. And here, Cunha basically gets past Declan Rice and Saliba, has some really good nifty feet, and forces a decent save. So he's showing people that hey, he's a danger man for them. And then Havertz comes off, Jesus off, and Keita on Martinelli off. And this was maybe where Arteta tried to gamble a little bit too much, because this coincided with basically. Uh, Jesus and Martinelli offered them a little bit more control on the ball. And unfortunately for them, it kind of played Wolves into the game. Now, there was a chance, though, for Trossard to basically kill this off. And it's a giant chance. Havertz really helps with this. So near impact from him. He steps in front of Cunha to win Arsenal the ball back. And then Odegaard, runs onto it and plays Trossard in behind. And there's a real chance to kill the game off. And Trossard just can't get his shot off in time. Tati Gomez does really well to put him off. And then the keeper, David Bentley, does come out to close down the angle. Saves that one and then saves Saka with the follow up effort. And then there was a chance for Wolves in the 85th minute. The game really opened up in the final 10 minutes, where Wang forced a Raya save and end to end action. Wolves quickly break and create a chance for Wang, and then they get the goal with Cunha. And after a couple scares, Wolves do finally get something in the game that I do feel like they deserved. Sarabia is trying to take on the whole Arsenal team. Sarabia has since come on. And he loses the ball in the box, but there's confusion between Declan Rice and Zinchenko. Zinchenko tries to carry the ball out of the box and basically gets the ball taken off by Semedo. And Cunha then gets onto the ball and lets it fly. Lets it fly into the upper 90, and it's a brilliant finish from him. And then in the 89th minute, the big chance that I think everyone's going to talk about comes to Nketiah. And Odegaard does brilliant to pick out Nketiah's run. He's 1v1 with the keeper, and he can't get the shot on target. He basically hits the post. And he's not the only Arsenal player that missed killing the game off. I want to, get that out there. But it is moments like this you figure Arsenal probably want to bring in a striker. David Bentley, though, the Wolves keeper, came on as a sub and played really well. He comes off quickly off his line. Gets as big and intimidating as possible to make this chance as hard to convert as possible. And maybe that kind of factored in a little bit. I can't say. But given the way how the game started, it's pretty good for Wolves to maybe feel like they could have gotten something a little bit. I mean, they only have 6 shots and 3 on target. Arsenal with 15 and 6. Arsenal 2.8 xG. Wolves a point 0.7. 4 big chances for Arsenal and 4 missed. And Nketiah probably being the biggest one uh, because it came late, I guess. But 2 big chances for Wolves. One thing I do wanted to add when I get to Wolves is this game. They came into the game a little empty handed. Um, they didn't have Mario Lamela, and they didn't have Yao Gomez, who really did boss Spurs in that second half a few weeks ago. It was Bellegarde, it was Tommy Doyle, little Man City academy prospect, and Babacar Traore, and they aren't nearly the same kind of quality on the ball. But Bellegarde's a good player, but he's also young too. This is his first season. So they were kind of just missing a little steal, missing a little more security in the middle of the field, and frankly, all three were terrified of Declan Rice. So when I get to Arsenal, I'll highlight Declan Rice because of that. Also, Hugo Bueno is not Ait Nouri. So this wasn't a full. This wasn't a strong Wolves 11 team. Coming in, no Neto as well. But they did have Wang and Cunha, and Cunha, what a he it feels like he has a lot he can score way more goals than he scored, I guess I'll put it that way. It has been surprising that, his numbers have been so low, but especially when he can strike a ball like that. But to quickly, touch on Arsenal, it's good to see Odegaard and Saka going. I think this was maybe Odegaard's best game. Just, the crosses, the delivery, some really nice through balls. And, it's just, it's good to finally see him going again. Hopefully, that can continue because a lot of the reason why Arsenal were just a lot of fun on the eye last year was Odegaard. Odegaard was just kind of orchestrating things. He also pitched in with something like 15 goals as a midfielder, and we just haven't necessarily seen that this year. So he not only had some great balls, he had a great goal, and so maybe well, it's just kind of the beginning of that. Maybe he was tired. He did have a little injury there, and so he it's only his second game back from that little injury. So maybe this will get him going. We'll have to see. And then just Gabriel Jesus is what he is. He has a great role in both goals, but it feels like he maybe could have done better with a couple of the other efforts. And he never wants to really uh, you know pass through center backs and be on the lookout to get in behind him. He's always looking for the ball. I just feel it's like in some games that really does hurt them. And then Declan Rice, 99 touches. He always has a lot of touches, but 4 for 7 long balls. So that's good. Sometimes he's not necessarily the greatest progressive passer. 5 interceptions though is really impressive. 2 tackles as well, and just it seemed like Wolves were basically in the second half were trying to go around him. They didn't want to go in the middle of the field at all because of his presence essentially. So he dictated the game just by that. But it wasn't just aura essentially. He dictated the game because in the first half Wolves were trying to run into him and he was dominating them. So and then the Nketiah miss is it's a drag, but I think it could be costly, financially and maybe for playing time. But at the same time, before January comes around, there's a fixture list of like 8 games now till basically January, and Nketiah, no matter what, is going to have more game minutes to prove himself and prove some critics wrong. So he'll get some more moments, I imagine. Um, and then it felt like Arsenal were different when Jesus and Martinelli went off. So that is what I wanted to mention as well. And I was trying to tell my brother, who was kind of discouraged a little bit, how after the final whistle that Wolves are a good time, a good side, and I mean they've beaten Man City, they've beaten Tottenham, and they drew Newcastle. For these top teams, this has been a hard matchup for them. And it did feel like this game did feel similar to that Tottenham game. So it's a good win. Not every game has to be 5-6-1 like it was or 6-0 versus Lens. Um, and then with Wolves, I mean, a sign when you believe in your manager is when you get nationally battered and still come out in the second half and play much better. I do think the Sarabia coming on was a good change. A little better ball security. Looks like he had a little more of an idea of what he wanted to do. And his little involvement actually helped create the second goal. But I do think the losses of Yao Gomez and Lamena were just a little too much for them. And I think the only negative is that Cunha goal didn't really come out to mean anything But what a player! And it's surprising he doesn't score more than he does. And then with Wolves, I think they get Neto back. It's either late December or early January. It's all about trying to manage as many points as you can when you get until you get Neto back. That is that. And then I'll move on to Liverpool and Fulham. See how we're doing for time. Um, Not bad. Okay, so if I can just keep that speed, we'll be good. Though I might spend way too much time on this. 4-3. Trent with the first goal. I say this is his goal. It's a free kick. It's a worldie of a free kick, and basically it banks off Leno's back, so they're calling it an own goal. And then 1-1. Anthony Robinson, USA's Anthony Robinson has a nice little assist to Harry Wilson, and then McAllister with basically, a worldie in his own right. This is maybe even better than Trent's goal. Fires this from there's like a Raul Jimenez, like, heads this down, so it's, like, bouncing, and he uses, like, the bounce and gets just great spin on the ball to basically just slide this, into the upper 90 and basically the side of netting of the upper 90 from, like, I don't know, 30-ish yards out. Just what a firecracker of a goal this was. And then it was 2-2 because Liverpool couldn't defend, a corner kick. Not having Allison definitely showed up this game. And then 2-3. Fulham actually get the lead, because of, Bobby Reid has come on, and, it's a really good cross by Tom Carney, who is also a second half sub. And, at that point, it was like, you're at Anfield. Virgil van Dijk has only lost one game when he started at Anfield, Leeds last year, and you're like, they played too well to actually lose this. And then Ento, shows up and basically turns into Coutinho with this goal. This is just as good as any of them. And then before it was the 90 seconds after that, where I was just thankful. I was like, oh, okay, just get the draw, live to fight another day. Trent comes out and turns into Steven Gerrard or Joanna Risa. I screamed when this went in, and it was just what a fun day. At least that was as a Liverpool fan. For Fulham, I don't imagine was much fun at all. Though it was good to see Anthony Robinson play, and not only did he play, he kind of starred a little bit. Uh, with Liverpool, the lineup was Trent, Matip, Virgil, and Tsimikas, Alexis, Szoboszlai, and Gravenberch, and then Salah, Nunez, and Diaz. Gravenberch gets the start, and he played really well in the Europa game. He kind of had a couple uh-ohs that actually led to some full goals. So, not his necessarily best moment. Darwin Nunez could have had a hat trick this game. He missed another couple big chances, but that said, he still contributed to some of their goals as well. So I'm not necessarily going to go over him that much. It's easier to say that when Liverpool win the game. Uh, and another thing to say is Elliott and Curtis Jones didn't get game time, but Gakpo came on, and Gakpo was good. Another thing that happened in this game was Klopp, because he saw that Anthony Robinson for Fulham was just doing whatever the hell he wanted on that side. He brought on Joe Gomez and basically moved Trent just fully into midfield. And basically that move changed the game. To be honest, now Fulham still scored with Joe Gomez being on the pitch. But that's the only reason why Trent's in the position he's in, to get that strike, late in the game. Also, I like Gravenberch keeps coming in and keeps playing in midfield and keeps playing underneath Nunez. And Gravenberch has basically, he fools Paulinho, and he basically creates that fourth goal for Trent as well. He fools Paulinho, and then he carries the ball basically from the halfway line. No one gets close to him because everyone's like worried about Salah and Nunez and whatnot, and no one closes down on him. He gets near the box, and he has a really good shot. It forces a good Leno save, and then Nunez, saves the ball, and then after Tsimikas, kept it alive, it fell to Trent. So without that, little Gravenberg moment, Gakpo moment, yeah, maybe that fourth goal doesn't happen either. So that was good to see. And then with Fulham, Paulinho was back. Uh, it was interesting to see no William. William didn't come on in the second half. And interesting to see no Carney, Tom Carney, because he was so good versus Wolves. But he came on in the second half and was good again. So I was actually glad that we didn't necessarily see him. Uh, I don't necessarily want to touch on all of it. I will touch on the goals though. So the first one did come with that Trent Alexander-Arnold free kick. Darwin Núñez does well here to first find Szoboszlai, and then Szoboszlai draws the foul, and then it's Trent Alexander-Arnold Beckham time, essentially, because this is a really good free kick. And then it's not long-lived, because Fulham immediately, get one back with Wilson, and it's a bad Matip, pass. It just gives the ball away. Anthony Robinson basically runs and intercepts the pass. It's basically too solid, but Salah's not really open. And then Iwobi carries the ball, upfield and then plays Robinson, making a run outside, and then Robinson, gets the ball and has a really good cross into the box where Harry Olsen is able to meet it. There was a similar moment in the first, minute of the game, similar cross from that area, so Liverpool weren't able to rectify that, and sometimes that's gonna happen when you have Trent Alexander-Arnold playing in this kind of little inverted, midfield role. That area of the field, that right side, when Matip has to run out or Kanate has to run out, that can be a little of a danger area. So something to maybe think about. Another thing too is Allison probably does save this if he's playing. So I mean, Kelleher had a couple of errors, and so that's another thing to maybe think about as well. And then Anthony Robinson had a shot that nearly deflected and gave Kelleher some trouble as well. And then we get to the 39th minute where McAllister scores his goal, and I put down Golasso because it is. Raul Jimenez again has just headed the ball backwards. He's trying to find a teammate, but he is actually his head is in his hands because he recognized that he just headed it to McAllister. But the ball is bouncing, but he's still like 35 yards out, and puts his laces through it, and this is just such a hit, such a good hit. Leno tries to dive, and he gets nowhere near it. Uh, and then you get the second goal with Tete. And again, it's maybe something that Allison maybe could have done better because basically the ball just slips underneath him. I mean, Callaway could have done better uh, because the ball is underneath him. And so Fulham nearly scored a third on a corner kick. So Liverpool looked vulnerable on corner kicks. And then there was a chance for Salah and a little give and go with Darwin Núñez. So it's good for Núñez to play a good ball in the air, but Salah can't beat Leto. And then I have really in the second half, it was about not getting some really good looks and not necessarily making them count. Before Fulham got that third with Bobby Reed, so Salah leads the counter here. It's end to end though. Fulham have a first decent attack going, and then it's defended well. Slobosly helps out to help win the ball back, and then from there the counter's on for Liverpool. Salah leads it and has Núñez basically sprinting like a madman to get in front of him. Salah plays him in, and Núñez smashes the crossbar, and it's just like just everything about this was really, really good except for the finish. And then Salah plays Núñez in again like 5 minutes later, and this one is poor. You can maybe go at him for there because Slobosly does really good job from the wing to pick Salah out. That's a fantastic ball that Slobosly hits. Salah basically heads it into Núñez in the box, and Núñez is all by himself, and Núñez fluffs his lines. He basically falls over himself trying to use his left foot or right foot to tap this in and just basically whiffs it out of bounds. Uh, life with Darwin Núñez. He's called the chaos agent because sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. This was Letton Darwin Núñez, I guess we could say. And then Fulham do get the third with Bobby Reed and Tsimikas is beaten on the back post, but I do think this is more on Gravenberch. Gravenberch has Diaz open for days on the left wing, and he tries to do something cheeky. And again, sometimes with risk does come with, or yeah, with risk comes with punishment, essentially. And here, Harrison Reed does really well to cut it out, and then they lead it. They find Tom Carney, and Tom Carney kind of leads this little attack. And Bobby Reed makes a run down the left wing. He has a cross that's sent over the everyone. William then gets the ball, keeps the ball alive, and he plays in Tom Carney, who continued his run into the box. And Carney does really well to get to the byline, and then sends a great ball over to the left side where Bobby Reed is able to just outjump Tsimikas. 50-50 for the aerial. Maybe Robinson could have done better. This was what I was worried about a little bit last season, or coming into this season though, with Robinson, is Liverpool not really adding some size to that left center back spot. But or I guess yeah, if I thought they were going to play basically a back three. That fullback spot essentially. I mean, that said, Tsimikas has been one of Liverpool's standout players the last few games, so I don't necessarily need to go at him for that. And then we have the first chance for Endo, and his shot deflects. Basically, Liverpool are just like in this kind of mode where they're like, we're not going to lose this game. So here Trent gets caught. He's getting the ball in central areas pretty much all in the second half. So he has a really nice pick out to find Cody Gakpo, and then Gomez eventually gets the ball sent in. He gets the ball, making a run down the wing, and he sends it in. Samikas keeps it alive, and he heads it back down to Alexander Arnold, where he first tries a shot, and that one's blocked. But then Enzo gets a chance, and this one's blocked. This could have gone in the net too. I mean, this could have gone anywhere. And then Salah has a chance over the bar from the corner kick. Liverpool have a chance there too. I think Luis Diaz makes a head that forces another good Leno save, and Salah had the rebound and missed it. But then we do get the Endo goal in the 86th minute to make it 3-3, and Konate has the ball and he floats a wonderfully long ball to pick out Darwin Núñez, and Darwin Núñez does well to knock the ball down with his header, and he's looking. Uh, it's not a by accident here. He's intentionally looking to knock this to Salah, and it's really good. So it's good that he contributed, even though didn't necessarily have scoring boots that day. And same with Salah. Salah had a couple of really good decisions that helped lead to goals, even though he didn't have his scoring boots on. So here he's able to find he lays us off to Endo, and here Endo turns into Kevin De Bruyne or Philip Coutinho. Just curling one into the upper 90 and just no first touch, nothing to collect. No, just hit this first time. And Fulham have so many bodies into the box. Endo really is the only one open. And as a Liverpool fan, I've seen Naby Keita get a chance like this in the Champions League final versus Real Madrid and miss hit this 40 yards out of bounds. I've seen Henderson get this kind of effort and send it into the Anfield Road out of the stadium. It's just that it's weird to see Liverpool actually get some goals from quality midfielders for a change. And then I guess the cherry on the top, the coup de grace, is the fourth one from Trent, and 90 seconds after the Endo goal. So I mean, your heart is still racing after that. Gakpo again does really well. Gakpo does well to full Paulinho, like I mentioned. And then it basically takes the ball of Endo. Gakpo's like, "No, I want this for myself." And he has a good shot. He rifles this and forces a good Leno save. And then Nunes as well to beat Tim Weem to keep the ball alive, and he flicks it over to Tsimikas, and Tsimikas does well to beat Bobby Reed in the air. And then the ball eventually finds Alexander Arnold, and he collects it with his knee. So this isn't an easy hit. So he first has to collect it with his knee. Then he positions himself to hit this and smashes it near post like Mbappe does, or again, like I had some fun with this, like Steven Gerrard or Gerardo Reisa, old old Liverpool fullback as well. And again, with this one in, it was pure joy. This was this is just all I guess I can say. And I was resigned after Liverpool after Bobby Reed scored that third goal. I was like, well, life without Allison. You figured they were going to lose, drop points eventually, and then after this, I was like, Liverpool never going to lose again. So I got a little bit of both emotions going there. 26 shots and 12 on target is mad. Four big chances, four missed though. Life with Nunez. Led with 9 saves. Both teams were good. Fulham, I do think weren't necessarily. Uh, they didn't play as bad for Liverpool to score four worldies on them. Liverpool did 26 shots and 12 on target. But Fulham weren't necessarily poor, though again, at the back end, they can maybe get got at, but Fulham's attacking players in outfield were really, really good. And credit to Marcus Silva. Again, I keep wanting to doubt them, and I shouldn't. 9 shots and five on target. Not as much possession. 284 passes. It was a low passing number considering what they did to Spurs. I mean, to Wolves just last Monday. That was a bit surprising, but Liverpool are really good. I guess I can say that Liverpool are really good at winning the ball back in a way. Just again, a season ago they couldn't have done something like this, and so I think the takeaways for me was Klopp subs. Klopp making some good changes again. I think Endo played his best game last Thursday. So maybe he came into some pretty good form. But what he did is he brought on Gomez and moved Trent into midfield as like a permanent thing, and that was big because Robinson was just enjoying himself too much. There was too much freedom for the center back, either Matip or after Matip got hurt, for Konate to have to deal with by himself. There needed to be a fullback there as well, and so. I don't know if we'll necessarily see that going forward. It's not great that Matip actually gets the injury now, because with Konate back, Konate can play there. But after that, you figured Joe Gomez is the other option for that center back spot. There is Kwanzaa, but Kwanzaa in the Opa games has been playing in Virgil van Dijk's stead on that left side. Can Kwanzaa play on the right side? Maybe he can, but sometimes that screws up with defenders. We've seen that with Fulham's Calvin Bassey. Calvin Bassey doesn't really have. He's been asked to play on the right side, and he's left-footed player, and it's taking him some time to struggle with that. So I don't know if Kwanzaa is left-footed or right-footed, but he's been playing mostly on that left side. So if he had to play, would that be an issue? Uh, So, with Matip getting hurt, and apparently he's gonna have a knee issue, uh, Gomez, you're not gonna be able to necessarily rely on Gomez being able to be a full-time right back. So this is maybe just kind of a one-off. Maybe it's kind of a tweak, that Klopp can do in between games. But, yeah, it was really good. But another thing too is just, the midfield goals in a way that I just can't remember. I mean, McAllister, scoring that banger. Slobosly scored a banger in the cup game versus Leicester. Endo, turning into Coutinho. I can't remember a game where, basically, there were 2 goals scored from midfield, as long as Klopp's been there, outside of Coutinho. Coutinho maybe did it. And then Trent, Alexander, De Bruyne, Beckham, Alonso, essentially Trent midfielder. I mean, just the general play was insane. Klopp moving him around, to be because he'll be a straight up midfielder, but 2 goals in 2 games for him. But another thing too, or I guess you can say 3. Another thing you can say is just his eye for a pass is some of the best in the league, maybe in all of Europe. If you just watch him actually like the distribution that he's doing. He's spraying it around the field everywhere. He's not really losing the ball, and he's so forward thinking. He's so progressive with his passing and decision making. He's able to just always just find feet. If he plays for England, in midfield, he'll start, for England, and as long as his legs aren't necessarily dead. He's about to break out in a way that people maybe haven't been paying attention to. Now I've seen this in watching, all their games, but also in some of the Europa games, he's actually been played in midfield, just, straight up. He's been played, well, he captained a game and he was like their number 6, essentially. He's been just popping up in different kind of, center spots all season. And here it showed up again. And with Endo, one thing I do want to say is because I've been a little bit critical on at least on my thoughts online. I thought he was the wrong signing to make, and but he has put in some good shifts in Europa. And maybe this past one he got a little confidence, and maybe it's taken some time for him to understand how Klopp likes to play. I still don't feel like he has the physical body to do this kind of to cover this much ground, counter pressing. But he's good in possession. You can say that he can be rash. He does go in for a challenge way too many times. But he makes good decisions, and he's not technically bad. And it's great. It's great that he got to have that little moment in front of the Anfield fans. Because what a goal that was, and I think that's his first Premier League goal as well. And the only negatives is Salah Diaz and Nunez blanked. Nunez had a really good chance, more than a couple chances, and he did lead the league in big chances missed last season. He still contributed though. That's good. I mean, Salah contributed as well. Gravenberch didn't have his best game, but he was really good in the Europa game. And again, the Matip injury is the only thing to think about, on top of the Jota injury. So we'll have to see if that still factors in. And the fear going into the game was, is missing Allison going to show up? I think it did. I think it already did in the first game. So Callagher needs to play better, or to state the obvious, or this will lead to drop points somewhere. Maybe not for Sheffield, though I want to eat my words. Apparently they're going to bring Chris Wilder back. So I don't know if they'll try a new manager bounce thing. But more than likely, I think they have Crystal Palace soon. That could be kind of a rough game. Um, they do have Man United and Arsenal though after that. So it is Kelleher's going to have to uh, at least he'll get some consistent playing time. So I mean, maybe he's just kind of rusty. He has been playing in Europa games, but it's a different kind of thing. We'll have to see. We'll have to see him get better. And then yes, Liverpool 2.0 is what people have been saying. And what is Liverpool 2.0? And I'll say it's 28 shots and 4 goals from midfielders. Anyways, and then with Fulham, you get Polina back. 8 for 13 ground duels is just insane. 4 interceptions, 5 tackles, and then Anthony Robinson was just like the heart and soul of the team. And I've kind of spoken about that. Uh, I think it maybe last episode. I just think he helps William kind of play narrow, or inverted, or not inverted. He likes allows William to play kind of centrally. There's always an overlap run that William can like use himself, and just the energy he has. He's good defensively too. But there was a stat last season where they mentioned it in the Nations League final, where it was like the top 3 players for like goals, tackles, duels, assists, things like that. And it was Trippier, Alexander Arnold, and then it was Anthony Robinson. he was up there with those names, and it's cool. It's cool to see an American doing that, and I think I did a show with Rex. I mentioned him as someone that I thought Newcastle should honestly look at. I saw like Dan Burn, kind of being what he was, and I was like, well, if you're gonna try to play a little bit like Klopp's old teams, he always had Andrew Robinson. He always had that bombing fullback that would always do well to get down the wings, but also send that cross in. And this is basically, I look at him like an Andrew Robinson protege. To be honest, I wouldn't be against Liverpool looking at him. To be honest, given how young he is, he can maybe be a little rough on the ball, but I feel like that could be coached into him. I feel like Andy Robinson when he showed up to Liverpool. I remember people making fun of him for being poor at some of those small sided games, essentially, and that that eventually his touch and decision making got better. I feel like that could be coached into him. But I mean, what a player he is, to be honest. And he not only did he shut down Salah, he forced Klopp to make a change. He was that good. And then Tom Carney and Iwobi. It's giving Fulham a different look. They're much better on the ball. And the only thing you can say is, maybe you can't even really go with you can go with the defense for giving up 12 looks basically at Leno. But the goals that beat Leno were worldies. It is what it is. Just unlucky for them. And then I'll move on to Man United and Newcastle. And this will probably I need to do more to praise Newcastle than just go at Man United because Newcastle doing this uh, with a normal roster, I think would be expected. It's probably what I would have predicted. Newcastle doing this with their entire 11 basically being unavailable, or basically I shouldn't say that. Basically, with half their squad, I guess, being unavailable and having to play three games versus Chelsea, a game versus PSG, where they were just PSG made them run everywhere, ragged, and then quickly having to play Man United again. I was not expecting them to be this physically dominant, them to outrun Man United by this distance. Um, and that gets to, unfortunately, to Ten Hag. This was a chance to really see the difference between the two sides because the gap between this was Man United in Man United's favor just a year ago. Man United beat them 2-0 in the Carabao Cup final. I think Man United even maybe they didn't. Yeah, Man United finished third. I think they've Newcastle finished in that fourth spot. Uh, it just feels in just a year, all of that's flipped. And Man United don't have Casemiro anymore. You don't have Varane, Lisandro Martinez. They haven't had Shaw for like half the year. They had Shaw this game, but they played him at center back. So it's just a short year. Newcastle have really gone up a level, where Man United have either stagnated or gotten worse. And you could argue gotten worse. Now, that said, Man United were on a fairly decent run in the league. Again, they were only 6 points off the first place table. Coming into this, I always thought that was kind of a mirage. They had been getting by being outplayed in like every game. They were outplayed by Sheffield. They were outplayed by Burnley. I thought they were relatively outplayed by Everton just a week ago, and they finally went up against a team that was not only better than them physically, outran them, outworked them, but also had some quality at the very end. And you know, there was nearly a moment where, like Man United they always get their hero moment where it looks like Anthony had a great goal, and it was just ruled out because Harry Maguire was offsides. So this game could have ended 1-1, but at the same time, Newcastle just had you would have imagined had no legs, no gas in the tank left at all. And I was just I thought Man United getting Newcastle was going to be good for them at this moment because I was like, Newcastle just how much energy are they going to have? And the answer was more than enough. Uh, so that was kind of the going into this. The lineup though was shocking. Again, Varane is available on the bench, and he went with Ten Hag went with Luke Shaw and Harry Maguire. No Lindelof either. Lindelof, I don't think is the problem. I think Maguire is. Aaron Mabasaka on the right side, Dallo on the left side for fullbacks, McTominay and Kobe Mano. Uh, Everyone's praised Mano for how he looked versus Everton. This isn't Everton. But another thing, he looked okay in the Champions League game, but he's 19 years old. It's different going against a Joe Linton or a Bruno Guimaraes or I guess like Louchel's or Shar if they're playing high up. It was a different ask, and Mano isn't necessarily an adult yet. And he had no help. McTominay wasn't helping out. Bruno, Rashford, Garnacho, Martial, none of them were helping out. And just the midfield was overrun. Mano can't do everything by himself. Dallo was overrun. He got no help from Garnacho. Aaron Wan-Bissaka, likewise, he got no help from Rashford. And again, Martial did nothing, in my opinion, without the ball either. And so it was a surprising lineup, and it was surprising that Ten Hag didn't make the changes earlier. It was interesting to see Martial start over Hoyland. Hoyland was able to play in the Galatasaray game, and I don't think he played a full 90. So you don't imagine it was a minutes thing. So that was a bit surprising. Rashford on the right side hasn't worked, and that's been kind of a theme too. And everyone wants to see Garnacho play on the left side because he's Garnald Ronaldo, and if you're not going to do stuff without the ball, you're not going to work back to help out your fullback. You can get benched too. And in this game, this was just a case of Newcastle knowing how to really exploit Man United not being able to track runners all game. They just ran through the midfield, ran them wide on the fullbacks, and overloaded them all game. Oh, that was the word to describe this game was overload. Newcastle overloading Man United everywhere, and the only surprise was they didn't win by more. But they did have chances. I mean, first 10 minutes, Dallo nearly has an own goal, and Gordon just wins the ball off Wan-Bissaka, and then it's an easy run for him to get at Man United's back line. Harry Maguire's first thought is to run backwards, not to run to the ball and that literally leads to a chance. And then Almiron had a chance to force a Onana save. Uh, and Lascelles is strong here. Lascelles basically runs to the ball. He does what Harry Maguire doesn't. And he runs to the halfway line and he helps win the ball back and helps Newcastle win it back. And Rashford then is trying to play Bruno Fernandes the ball, and Bruno basically stops running and doesn't even contest the 50-50 duel. And Joe Linton easily gets him and then easily plays the pass to McTominay or past McTominay. And then Gordon passes it back to Joe Linton, and Joe Linton quickly passes it to Almiron. Just quick little three-man triangle with three players: McTominay, Bruno, and Garnacho, Kobe Mano, so four players, are just standing around watching this little triangle happen. People online have clipped up Rashford not running, and it wasn't just Rashford; it was the whole team. And eventually, Trippier gets on the ball, he plays in Joe Linton, making an unmarked run into the box, and then he basically picks out Almiron. I think it's Kobe Mano. Kobe Mano's trying to stop maybe a pass, and Joe Linton cuts inside and picks out Almiron, and it's a good shot, and it's saved by Onana. And then there's a chance for Ishak, and the shot just barely misses, or maybe there's a Maguire deflection. But again, Man United just could cheaply give the ball away, and there's no desire to pressure to win it back. Garnacho has a fault again, and he's just walking. And again, only Rashford's clipped up, not him. He's only 20. I get, but you're going to do the Ronaldo Sue celebration. You're a senior player, and as far as minutes go, you played last season. He has to know he has to do more, especially if he loses the ball. He has to run back and help out. And then there's after Bruno Guimaraes gets on the ball, is Almiron making a run behind, or Dallo is out of the picture. Bruno Guimaraes is being lazy here too. I mean, Bruno Fernandes is being lazy here too. And it's Almiron square ball that then is deflected, and the rebound found to Ishak. And this easily could have gone in. Just Maguire's lucky deflection just sends us wide. In the 19th minute, there was a Lascelles chance on the corner kick. And the only reason to kind of highlight this is there are like three 50-50 balls that Newcastle win in a row to keep the ball alive. And then Lascelles gets a chance. And really, 22 minutes in, it felt like there was maybe a couple moments where Garnacho was in on goal, or they required some defending for Newcastle. But for the most part, Pope didn't touch the ball once. And Onana's goal was under assault. And then there's a chance for Sarr and Fabian Schär, who's a center back. And I just kind of want to highlight this because the dribble leads to a foul. But it's another good example of just how easy this is for Newcastle. A center back just glides past the entire Man United midfield like they aren't there. And then he's brought down by Harry Maguire, and then being a noof. And then basically on the free kick, Trippier has a wonderful free kick. Onana doesn't move. And he didn't really have the best go of it, stopping free kicks for Galatasaray. So maybe it's good Onana didn't move. And basically gets lucky. The crossbar saves him. And then there was a big chance for Livramento. All this happened in the first half. And so a deflection nearly beats Onana. And here, Man United just allowing Joe Linton to bully McTominay. Livramento then makes a run. It's not picked up. And Joe Linton plays him the ball, and Livramento's cross nearly deflects in. And so my halftime thought was, I don't know how this game wasn't, Newcastle 3-0, essentially. Man United had to be thanking their lucky stars they were still in the game. And it just felt like they were just outworked, outmatched, outdueled, everything. They're just letting runners go unmarked all game. And it finally comes up to haunt them in the 55th minute with Gordon. And this was coming, and it comes in the perfect fashion with a runner going completely unmarked in the box. And so Luke Shaw has the ball. He's being pressed by Ishak, and Shaw does a lovely pass upfield, and then Newcastle quickly step in front of the ball. Trippier is first to win it, and then Bruno Guimaraes of Newcastle gets on the ball on top of the box, and he doesn't have anyone pressing him. And he's able to look up and see that Trippier is made a run or continued his run, and he's wide open, unmarked on the wing. Trippier of all people, and he plays Trippier the ball, and then it's just a simple square pass hard across the 6-yard area for Gordon to have it tap in. So, and I want to highlight the positioning here of the actions of Bruno Fernandes and basically everyone's favorite 21-year-old Alejandro Garn Ronaldo. Uh, I need to work on that because both are standing still when Trippier is all alone. Everyone is going at Rashford online. It was everyone. It was these two. It was your favorite players too, Man United fans. Dallo then is worried about Almiron, and that's why he's out of the picture. Dallo is so focused on Almiron, so Trippier is getting the ball wide open in the box, no one near him, and you've got two players on Man United side, Bruno Fernandes and uh, Garnacho, that just that have allowed it to happen, and that's what Man City kind of did beat Man United doing something similar when they just overloaded them to death. You've given the fullback a 2v1 situation, they have to take one out, but that still leaves one open. And, so here, Dallo, maybe mess up a little bit, being the last man back too, because he kinda plays Gordon on sides when he actually does try to go out to Trippier. But, Wan-Bissaka also messes up by allowing Anthony Gordon to get goal side of him. So that maybe shouldn't have happened either. And then maybe the one kind of thing Man United fans have is Fabian Schär could have been sent off, for a Curtis Jones like incident. He goes for the ball, wins it, but his follow through kind of goes on Bruno Fernandes' ankle, but it's not. And then there's a chance for Lewis Miley, blocked last second by Wan-Bissaka, but here Joe Linton is completely free on the other wing, and this is time you can actually go at Rashford. This is one of the instances where maybe it was clipped up. Uh, so Gelatin just completely free, unmarked. Rashford isn't doing well to help out, and then a ball crossed in, and the deflection finds Louis Miley, and he gets a shot on target. But Wan-Bissaka is just kind of there to be in the way. And then Man United do get a couple moments their way. In the 84th minute, there's a Reguilon shot. Reguilon has since come on, and this is costly for Newcastle because it injures Nick Pope. Pope had nothing to do all day, and I don't know if his muscles were cold. Maybe he dove weird. Uh, because, the shot maybe is heading toward goal, but it ends up hitting a Newcastle, defender. So Pope, like, dives it, maybe sees it late, and I don't know, he lands weird on his side, and it looks like he dislocated his shoulder. And they're saying he's gonna be out for, like, 3 to 4 months, or maybe even 5 months. So Newcastle are going to be without Pope for the rest of the season, potentially. So that is they were already, dealing with injuries, so that's the only real negative, and it is a negative, that they're going to have to deal with. I don't know if they're gonna look into someone to bring someone in February, I mean, in January, or but they might have to do that. So we'll have to see. Ramsdale is maybe available, for Arsenal. Just kind of throwing that out there. We'll have to see. And then, basically in the 90th minute, the funny thing happens with Man United basically getting their hero moment. You knew it was coming, but it's chopped off for the funniest reasons. So Anthony has since come on as a sub and scores a wonderful first time volley. And it's chopped off because for some reason Harry Maguire decided to be the striker in the final 8 minutes of the game. Maybe Ten Hag told him to do it. Uh, and it gets in the way of the strike, and from the offside position, basically prevents it from being counted. So it wasn't enough that Harry Maguire started the game. Ten Hag wanted him to make this a masterpiece of a performance by adding him, by adding this part of the game to his resume, being a striker. And maybe you can argue that Newcastle cleared this way if Maguire isn't there to contest the header in the first place. But at the same time, and it is a hectic situation. Uh, but he's been in the league for I don't know 10 years now. He has to know where the last defender is, and he basically someone like falls in front of him, and he like steps behind it, and he basically puts himself off sides, and then basically Anthony's volley kind of hits like the side of his chest, and it is what it is. Man United did not deserve to get anything from this game, so I feel like that would be justice as well. Uh, And it's the only thing you can say is it was surprising they didn't win by more. Newcastle didn't win by more. But at the same time, Newcastle are just thankful that they get the 3 points and they're able to rest some energy because they've got a really big game versus AC Milan coming up soon. And before that, I think they play another quick game. Everyone plays this week. Everyone plays either Tuesday or Wednesday. Maybe Newcastle decide to just kind of eat the points essentially. We'll find out what Eddie Howe thinks. What matters more? And they possibly because they have probably a game on the weekend as well. It's a quick turnaround, and then that home game versus AC Milan. If they win that game, they have a chance to stay alive in Champions League. So Newcastle are in a really weird situation where they might have to eat some points because they don't have depth to rest players. On the bench, Eddie Howe wasn't going to make a sub. The only sub he made was Nick Pope, or maybe towards the very end, I think he took off. He took off someone to bring on. I'll think of his name later on, but it's like a 30-year-old player playing on the right side, uh, and the other only players on their available on the bench are like 21-year-olds. So it's a very weird situation for them. But to pick off with Man United, not to necessarily spend an hour on this. The lineup was weird. Mano, again, as a kid, you have Amrabat available. Amrabat's a physical beast. He would have suited this better. Hoyland is a physical beast. Martial didn't have a touch all game. Why not at least give the Newcastle center backs something to think about with a ball over the top where they have to respect a Hoyland making a run? I don't understand that at all. And the real elephant in the room, I think Bruno Fernandes is a problem, and no one wants to hear this. And I get that he scores bangers for them. He just first Galatasaray, and he's their savior. He was their savior versus Fulham. He can only be a hero 35-40% of the time. Man United play hero ball, and then he embodies it. But when your hero gets missing, you get this, and you get overrun. It's 2023. You can't play with a designated number 10 player that has a free role all game that doesn't have any duties defensively. It's not organized, it's not structured. And I think others aren't going to cover, especially if you're not going to have others cover for you. And Rashford doesn't do it. Bruno doesn't do it. Garnacho's not doing it, and Martial in this game weren't doing it. But it's just you have that number 10 kind of player, and he's never really helping out in midfield. You're always going to be outrun in midfield, and you're always going to get outnumbered. And it's just no other elite team, I guess I'll say, plays this way. They just don't. They're number if a team plays with a number 10, you see them doing a lot more work to help out. It's not just a sole number 10. It's maybe a number 10/8 role. You don't see Bruno do that, and I think he leads to their space issues. He makes them so open. Sometimes he presses by himself and just kind of leaves that area too. It's not structured, and it feels like anytime I'm doing a Man United game, that's kind of what I'm focusing on every single time. And I just in my script, I am always talking about them not covering midfield runners not being tracked or fullbacks being isolated in 2v1 situations, and just none of the attacking players helping out. So it's a Bruno problem, but Rashford. It's also the whoever's playing on the attacking wings, Garnacho or whoever. In this game, it was Martial, and I mean it is just crazy to see how much different this was versus Newcastle, a team that understands how to counterpress as a team, how to set traps, how to win the ball back, how to cover for each other, how to exploit space, how to track runners, how to win duels, to get turnovers. And the other team, Man United, had no idea what to do. Had it was such a different. It was such a contrast. And for Ten Hag, that's not good that people were able to just see it right up in front of their eyes. Um, and then with Harry Maguire, it's you can't play with a high line with him, and just people are gonna go with Onana. Onana made his mistakes versus Galatasaray. No one can say anything else. But it feels like they brought him in. They brought him in as this like main band aid over a gash. It seems they thought they could just bring in a keeper that's really good playing with the ball at their feet, to fix their build-up issues without anything else. And it doesn't work like that. You need outfield players to be comfortable receiving the ball in tight areas for this to work. Maguire doesn't like doing that. Wan-Bissaka doesn't like doing that. McTominay doesn't like doing that. And it's just it just feels like they brought him in for the wrong reason. And if that was the only reason, then this isn't going to work. But that said, Onana, if given some time, has shown the ability to make some pretty good saves. He had a good game in this game. But with his feet, he was 55 it was 50% pass accuracy. He was 3 for 20 with long balls. He was uncomfortable. Everything he did looked uncomfortable. So I think that's kind of factoring in as well. And then with Harry Maguire, it's the same situation every week. He creates a backline situation where you can't play a high line, and so when he plays, there are gaps between the middle and the back line every single game. And you've got Lindelof, you've got Varane that are there that for some reason weren't picked, and I don't get what's happened all of a sudden. Uh, that is where Ten Hag can maybe people can maybe look at him a little bit because it's been surprising. Amrabat is an adult. Kobe Mano is not. Amrabat should have played this game. So Ten Hag squad selections I don't think are really helping. So that's maybe something to think about as well. I mean, it feels like Man United are like in I don't know 10th in the table, and yet they still points wise aren't that far off. They've just been getting by week in and week out. So there are still ways to somewhat I guess fix this. Otherwise, this all feels very very papered over, and people got to go with Ten Hag. I've said my thoughts on this. I just don't think he's been really given a whole lot of chances to succeed. And probably the best embodiment of what's different this year than last year is Marcus Rashford. And people are going to go at him for not, doing defensive work. He wasn't doing defensive work last season. He was just scoring goals. So, what is his best position? Is it a nine? He hasn't really worked on the left this time. Bringing in Hoyland seems to have maybe created some issues for reasons that don't make sense. Another thing too last season is he had Luke Shaw. Luke Shaw was doing a really good job overlapping and doing a really good job of like just playing him in. They've only had Shaw. Shaw's only returned, so I think they've been hurting there. Casemiro and Lisandro Martinez were helping Man United win the ball back, so they were able to have a few players not do stuff without the ball. Uh, and they were able to give Ashford transition moments that he hasn't had this season. So I think there are ways to look at this in multiple ways. I'm not going to just put the blame on one player, though I did kind of go a little bit at Bruno there. But I don't necessarily think it's just Ten Hag either. I will maybe point the finger at some of the recruiting and some of the football directing side because I think one thing that's very weird for the last few years is when is the last time that someone can say that Man United outran a team, like a top six just competitive side. When have they outrun someone? They started this season actually being one of the better teams at counter pressing and actually winning the ball high up in the area. You can't really do that with Harry Maguire because you have to press high and win the ball high up. You have to have a high line. So there's just issues everywhere. And then unfortunately, it has been a lot more time on Man United than Newcastle. What a job that Eddie Howe has done. I just keeps somehow he keeps continuing to kind of surpass even more expectations. To be honest, and credit to him. Even when people like me kind of want to still down them a little bit, and maybe that can still happen. Just because you imagine the injuries are eventually going to show up, and now maybe without Nick Pope, how are they going to do with a backup keeper for this whole stretch before they bring someone in? They're playing Lewis Miley, 17-year-old, and he's got adults. This is why it's different with Mano is he's got someone like Bruno Guimaraes. He's got professionals that are near him. Another thing too is Newcastle's fullbacks just completely outclass Man United what they have with Livramento and Trippier. And Livramento has only just come into the side, but what a player he looks. Uh, I mean, even when Dan Burn gets healthy, I don't. Maybe Dan Burn can be a center back. I don't. I wouldn't play Dan Burn over Livramento unless you're trying to really be defensive minded. Livramento makes their attack so much more fun. He's got great pace, but he's got some lightning feet with that pace. So he's got a change of pace. Uh, but he's got good delivery on him. He just unlocks that left side in a way that Trippier does for the right side. So now Newcastle has a little balance here. and I think it's helped Anthony Gordon. Anthony Gordon's now got someone to do some overlapping with, and just what a great story this is. Because I remember him from Southampton, and then he got hurt, doing his ACL, and we didn't see him for almost a year and a half. And it's just great that modern medicine, I guess, has found a way where even someone having that injury that hasn't really affected his pace that much. Maybe it's affected a little bit, but it's not showing. So what a great story that is. And then again, the only negative really is the Pope injury. Oh, Joe Linton rediscovering his form from last season. I feel like in the beginning of the season, maybe he was a little leggy. He didn't look the player he was. In this game and the last couple of games, he has really turned out and been absolutely unplayable. Just fully incredible. And and that's helped with the Newcastle, with this Chelsea game and Man United as well. And then I'll move. Speaking of Chelsea, I'll move on to Chelsea and Brighton. And Chelsea go on to win 3-2. They haven't. They've been able to actually get through this really hectic stretch in the schedule. Uh, Survive, really. Beat. It hasn't been pretty, because Newcastle thumped them, but they better get through this with I think 7 points. You drew Man City. That wasn't necessarily pretty because you gave up 4 goals. You gave up two here. It didn't help that you had to play like half the second half down a man, which I'll have to get into. But think about it. Everyone was writing Chelsea off when they saw the schedule of Spurs, Man City, Newcastle, and Brighton all in a row, no break, and they managed to get 7 points out of that. 2 wins and a draw, only one loss. That's not terrible. And maybe they're close to getting Christopher and Cuckoo back. I think I've seen that he's maybe close to training, close to getting Roman Lavia back. Now again, that's where all the praise will stop, of course, because they spent $1 billion for the squad. This is very shady to me. There are still a number of players that aren't really working out, and two, I don't really want them to work out. I don't want Lavia to work out because of what they did with Liverpool or Casado. Just everything has just been very shaky. How this roster has been spent, and maybe Pochettino can turn them around a little bit. I don't really want it to happen. I still think they have an issue with Thiago Silva, and it looks like everyone's praising him because of what happened in this game. Good. I want him. I want people to still praise. I want the people to still think he's got game to him because it's different, in my opinion. Uh, Now this is going to come from I'm a nobody essentially, but it's different when I feel like you're asking him to defend packed in a block. You're defending a goal essentially, and it's much different as opposed to when a game is open, when you have to play a little higher up, when he's asked to like do some 1v1 defending. Here they protected him a little bit. They went to a back three or back five essentially after Brighton went after the red card happened in the second half, and he was good. He had a few good defensive clearances. He's obviously got experiences for days. But I still think over the course of a season, he's going to make more errors, as we saw versus Newcastle. But anyways, um, the weird thing about this game was 3 goals came from corner kicks. First two from Chelsea, with first with Enzo Fernandez, and then Nicholas Jackson did well to keep the ball alive, and then I think it was Levy Colwell. Unfortunately for Brighton, Levy Colwell scored against them. Brighton really wanted to keep Levy Colwell in the summer, and Chelsea were like, "We're not going to do that." That was kind of a little storyline coming into this. There was actually a weird theme between a weird like brew between row, I guess is the word to say, between these two clubs. Graham Potter, Chelsea, took Graham Potter off Brighton. Took Graham Potter, brought all his assistants with him. They've still stayed at Chelsea. Caicedo, they brought Caicedo off him. They stole or they kept Colwell from them. And Brighton have Billy Gilmore from Chelsea. So just there's a weird kind of a relationship between these two clubs. And with Brighton, because they were down, they were up a man for large parts of the game. They're going to be unlucky. They're going to look back at this and think this was a chance for them to have. But that said, they're just like Newcastle. Brighton are missing a ton of people themselves. They're starting youngsters like Thomas Henchelwood. At fullback, he's not even a fullback by trade. He's played in that game versus Aston Villa next to Billy Gilmore. So I think he's kind of a defensive-minded kind of midfielder. And in this game, they were without Lewis Dunk, and Chelsea scored two early corner kick goals. Uh, that I think Lewis Dunk would have defended at least one, maybe even both. So I think that kind of showed up. And then kind of the highlight in the game was Brighton had a corner kick themselves, and 60 seconds after the ball was sent in, it went right to Sanchez, as Sanchez just quickly found Raheem Sterling, and then Sterling led basically the counter, and the counter proved costly. Sterling found it to Nicholas Jackson. Nicholas Jackson did well to play in Mudryk, Michaela Mudryk, who continued his run. And there's a lot of controversy between James Milner maybe coming in and fouling him or not. It wasn't called in real time, but VAR, the people doing VAR was like, the ref maybe made an error, and they overruled it and basically gave Chelsea the PK, and that proved to be the key play of the game, because that gave Chelsea the 2-goal lead, and then Brighton weren't able to do anything until the very end, where Yao Pedro basically got them back in it with 3-2, and then with 10 minutes of extra time, you thought maybe there'd be a chance. And the crazy thing about this game is, how it ended. I found out a rule that I didn't even know. I'm curious if if I'm alone. So Brighton are trying to cross the ball into the box very, very late. Basically, is the last kick of the game, and Levy Colwell stops it. Uh, but his hand is up. Everyone assumes, or everyone is trying to assume, that Colwell's hand is raised, and maybe it grazed his hand or something. They think it's going to be a PK, and the PK is actually given. And then he has the ref, Craig Paulson, has to go to the monitor and look, and sees, oh, it very clearly hits his head. And because it's a reversal of the decision that was given, Brighton don't get the corner kick that they wanted, that they had just scored with the Pedro on, that they showed that they can be dangerous on. No, instead it's a restart, and Chelsea get the ball, and that basically kills the game off. So very, very bizarre way that ended. I'm not really going to touch a lot about the actual action that happened in it. That's just kind of like the rundown. Um, I do think it was interesting to see, because Brighton are so starved for options. James Milner came on in the second half. I don't think it was a good sub. And not just because, you give away the PK. Maybe it wasn't the right call. A lot of people were going at the refs here. Another thing you could say is Caicedo was probably lucky not to be sent off himself. The Gallagher got sent off for absolute justified reasons. In fact, people were wondering maybe the first one could have been red, just by itself. I mean, Gallagher gets an early yellow, and then completely goes to ground, stopping a Bill Gilmore maybe a transition moment. Uh, and there's no gripe about that one. But Caicedo was maybe lucky not to be sent off either, because he got away with a couple late challenges with a yellow himself. So I think people were kind of looking at that. But really, it's all about Chelsea getting 3 points, being down a man, and just getting through this stretch. Brighton at full strength with Lewis Dunk, I do think win this game comfortably. But it is what it is. I mean, I'm not really going to harp on the shots that much. Chelsea with three big chances. It's just kind of good for the Chelsea to just kind of, I guess, get out of this. They're not going to have Conor Gallagher for Manchester United, though. They just played down a man versus Brighton, and they've got a quick turnaround with Man United. Maybe that's going to be a good time for Man United to play again. Man United may be going to be embarrassed by what they've heard, though. Heard one thing I didn't say about them is apparently there's been a bunch of falling out with players, and they're going to the media. That's just what happens at that stupid club. Leakers everywhere. So maybe they'll be I don't know, distracted. But Chelsea have to be probably a little tired themselves. We'll have to see if that shows up or not. I think Chelsea have a lot more structure to their team right now than Man United. So I would probably expect Chelsea to win that game, but we'll have to see. That's actually tomorrow, because of the quick turnaround. It's Enzo's best game. Just not just the goals. He's been good on the ball, but just him and Casado actually showed a decent partnership. I thought Enzo actually was good versus Man City. I can't be fair about that. But he had a couple really good balls to play in Sterling that didn't necessarily come to anything. But he was really he was lively. Obviously got the goal. Um, the tactic change by Pochettino maybe won them in the game too. Going to the back five, bringing on Ian Matson to basically, so it was Badiashile, Silva, Colwell, and very compact back three with Matson and Diazy as wing backs, and Diazy is more of kind of a center back. Anyways, and I took Jackson off to do this. So people going to look at Jackson not necessarily scoring again. Jackson had a good game though. He set up the PK. He actually helped set up the second goal with that header. Um, just it's taken some time for him, and maybe when you get Nkuku back, maybe you can try to find a way to play him in. There's no Cole Palmer in this game. Um, so, maybe you can kind of look at that. That'll be interesting to see if Cole Palmer's able to go versus Man United. I think he was able to play a couple minutes in the second half, but apparently he suffered something in training and wasn't able to was on a minutes restriction. Uh, and then I mean that's kind of it. I mean the Nkuku thing is going to be everything. It's going to be fascinating to see how he can get back on the field. It'll be interesting to see if maybe Pochettino changes formations, changes what he's doing because it looked like in spurts in that summer series, he was kind of playing more of a back three than necessarily a back four, and just in Cuckoo and Jackson had a little two man offense going, and they were really good. Now again, it's in the summertime, preseason, whatnot. People don't respect it. I understand. I'm not going to say it's the same thing as a real game. But you can get a sense of how chemistry can work between two players, and Cuckoo and Jackson did look good together. So it'll be interesting to see if we can see that soon. And then with Brighton, I think the one thing you can maybe look at, well, obviously the Lewis Dunk injury messed up, but I think the one critique you can look at with De Serbi is, or at least De Serbi's team is, it's those games when you can't draw teams out with your build-up, when teams are compact against them, well drilled, it's been hard for them to break through. Now they were able to break through versus Nottingham Forest, but it was different, and they're missing half a squad, so there's a ton of that. They played a pretty hard game in the midweek versus AEK, so there was some of that too. So I mean that Europa is obviously taking a lot on their squad, and so it is what it is. I do think bringing James Milner and maybe he's great in the locker room, but it just feels like anytime he's come on, they've been vulnerable to conceding, and they probably did again. And maybe the one positive you can say is Van Hecke started to be a really good player for them. So there's his he keeps having some pretty good moments. You know, Chelsea did win 3-2, but at least there's some of that. And then I'll move on to Bournemouth and Aston Villa in a fun game that ended 2-2. A bit of a surprise, given how good Villa have been, but Bournemouth have been good, in the last month or so in their own right. And they get the first goal by Semenyo, and then a really good goal by Leon Bailey to tie it, and then Dominic Solanke got the second one, and then right at the very end, Ollie Watkins with a header. The interesting thing was I mentioned it last week how uh, one of the reasons why I thought Aston Villa had been so successful, at least this season, the start of this season, is there hadn't been a lot of squad rotation. But you figured that couldn't last, given how they were also in Europe as well, the Conference League. And here we finally saw a little rotation. Diaby wasn't able to go second half sub. No barbecue Kamara. I think he was suspended. So we saw Tielemans and David Luiz, who were a little different in midfield, and they were able to kind of be played through a little bit. Tielemans didn't have a bad game, but it was a little different. Um, no, Matakashi he did come on in the second half, and Diaby came on in the second half. Zanello, got to start with Watkins, so this was a little different, and Villa weren't necessarily on their game. And then with Bournemouth, not a whole lot of change either. One player to really talk up is Ryan Christie has turned out to be a much better player than I was expecting, and that partnership with Cook and Christie has been pretty good. And then in this game, Kirkeritz, didn't even get the start last week. It was Lloyd Kelly. Kirkeritz had a really good game himself, and basically led a part in the second goal. And then Anthony Semenyo has come in, and it took a while to actually get into the 11. But I think one of the reasons why you've seen Bournemouth actually have a little success in this little month or so is anytime I kind of do lineups, I have like a little script in front of me, and I repeat whatever the lineup is for each team each week. And for the last couple of weeks, when I've gone to Bournemouth, I haven't had to change anything. And so, other than maybe Kirkritz for Lloyd Kelly, Senese and Zaboneri have been kind of the center back partnership. Adam Smith, since he's been healthy the last couple of games, has come in instead of Max Aaron's, and you've seen a little, I guess, the consistency. And I think that's maybe helped out a little bit as well. So I don't necessarily want to touch on a lot of them. I mean, the Aston Villa goal with Leon Bailey was really. I guess I will kind of touch on him. So the first goal with Semenyo, it is a great finish. It's also a little luckier because Diego Carlos basically plays the ball right to Ryan Christie, and then Christie plays in Semenyo in the box, and it's a goal scoring instinct. So that was good. And then with Aston Villa, Leon Bailey, this is a really good finish in his own right. The only Kirkeritz had a really good game, but he maybe could have could go at him a little bit here. He doesn't get tight enough to close down Leon Bailey and allows Bailey to cut on to his favorite left foot. He gets towards goal and he just basically pearls us into the net with his left foot. Uh, and then Diego Carlos basically scored on a free kick, so he almost amended his mistake, but it was chopped off for an offside. And then basically Emery had enough of Zanello, so we saw Jacob Ramsey come on to start the second half. But it's Villa. I mean, it's Bournemouth that get basically game opening goal or the game breaking goal essentially to break the tie. There we go. With Solanke, and it's a great run by Kirkitz. He sees uh, I think Emi Martinez, it's just going long with the ball. So it just starts with Villa having the ball. So this probably annoys Unai Emery. He's going long, and Kirkich is strong on the ball to win the ball back. And then from there, it's just a really great run. And he sees Solanke in the box. He passes it to Solanke, and Solanke does really well to kind of just collect this and spin on the ball, and then has a nice little hit with it. And it's a really good goal by Solanke. And then it looks like Bournemouth were going to get a great 3-point win, and then Ali Watkins just kind of showed up out of nowhere, and Diaby has come in the second half and plays a good ball into the box with good whip, but the ball's behind Ali Watkins, so he has to adjust his head to get to this, and this is a fantastic header by Watkins to get this in, and there you go. I feel do you feel like maybe Conference League traveling is starting to show up because Villa weren't necessarily on their A game, and lo and behold, they do get Man City for their next game, but at least they'll get Barbecue Kamara for that. 11 shots, only 3 on target. Bournemouth 15 and 7, 4 big chances for Bournemouth. Bournemouth were a better team. No, it was a different team though. I mean, we've seen Tielemans have to play a couple different options. He was asked to be a pivot midfielder in this game, and it's just him and Douglas Luiz. Douglas Luiz was missing Kamara to help him win the ball back. It'll be. I'm probably expecting them to get Kamara back, but I mean Ryan Christie just ate on this team. 11 for 19 with ground duel, 11 for 15 with ground duels, 4 for 4 dribbles completed, 3 key passes, 2 chances created, and 86% pass accuracy. So really good for Bournemouth to finally find some pretty good midfield to help out with that exciting attack. Uh, and then with Villa, maybe the annoying thing for Emi Martinez is both these goals could have been prevented. Basically Diego Carlos misplayed a ball to Ryan Christie for the first one, and then Martinez kind of playing that one. And then I'll move on to Burnley and Sheffield United. Burnley go on to win 5-0, and this probably is the end or it is the end of Paul Higginbotham's tenure at Sheffield United, and it sounds like they brought in the old guy that was that was there before. I think I remember his name. I can see his face. I'm pretty sure I wrote it down. Do, 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 do. It is why Chris Wilder. I didn't know that. So it looks like they brought in Chris Wilder to come back, and I'll get to this later on. I don't necessarily know if it's going to be the same thing for him to help you save you, because Sheffield when Wilder was there had a much younger, John Egan, Chris Basham. I think there was a third, maybe Chris Baldock. There was a third center back there in that three, and they were quite good at they were kind of the first in far as playing a back three, but playing with like center backs that had a different position, had a different role in the team than others. They would go wide. They would kind of sometimes you go forward. I remember versus Chelsea, basically two center backs scored their goals. Uh, I don't necessarily know if you can necessarily do that with this team, this kind of makeup, but we'll have to see. With Burnley finally get their the much needed win. They were close to getting it versus Sheffield. They get it here. First goal from Jay Rodriguez with the first minute. So if they were nervy going into the game, it's good to get a goal in the first minute, and then Larson gets an early second, and then after that, the probably the most important player on Sheffield, Ollie McBurnley, decides to get himself sent off. And the first time, he probably could have got sent off for the first offense. He goes in to challenge a header, and he has a flying elbow, and he gets away with the yellow there. And then right as halftime's coming in, it happens again. He does another flying elbow. It's not like his hand hits a head; it's his elbow. He has a little bit more control with his. He has to have more control with his elbow. So it's two stupid yellows to get yourself sent off, especially at right before halftime. And from there, Sheffield are down a man. They did have a chance, I think, with Usiela coming on to maybe make it 2-1, but for the most part, it was always going to be it was kind of inevitable. Just win, and how much were Burnley going to win by. And they get the third with Andouani, and then Kolyashu gets his first goal of the year. I guess first Premier League goal, and then Brownhill. Brownhill had a pretty nice goal, little Indo like goal himself to kind of cap it off. The weird thing though is it was only a 2-0 game going into that 70-ish minute mark, and then you had that scare with Usala. So it wasn't it took a while for this to break open, but once they got the third, they all kind of just came out, and you saw Sheffield being weak, and being really open, and again, it was surprising that it's taken this long for Hackenbottom to kind of, be the first manager to lose. I was kind of expecting it after the Newcastle game, and then Arsenal kind of beat them, 4-0, beat them pretty soundly, and it just felt, this is probably going to happen. But one thing I want to talk about them is Burnley started with a player that was one of their it was either Ndiaye or Sandberg. That was like the player of the season last season for Sheffield, and Sheffield sold him to Burnley to start the season, and Sandberg started this game. And it's just like it's something that Sheffield just didn't have in their midfield with his kind of presence, his kind of physicality, his quality on the ball. And I just think that was a weird decision to do in the beginning of the season, and it showed up here in a way that they probably didn't want. But also, Burnley have been close. They were close versus West Ham, and for the most part, Company has started to field a consistent 11 himself. Larson got his first start, so that was a bit of a change. Rodriguez getting a start again now that he's healthy. Him and Nduni make a pretty good front two. And then, Burge and Brownhill, pretty decent still in midfield. It could be better, but it's not terrible. And Kolyashu has, legs for days to make some runs. And in this game, you're starting to see a little consistent back line with Vitinho, John O'Shea, Jordan Beyer, and Charlie Taylor. So consistency. Sometimes it just is something as simple as that for a team to play better. You get to, especially with this team. This team had a lot of players that they had to bring in and replace because of all those loan deals and whatnot. Last season their two best players were Ian Matson and that like pacey winger that was that's at Southampton United now. Southampton now. That I'll probably remember later on. But anyways, it was like those two that were responsible for a lot of their wide creative goals, and they've had to replace that, and it's taken some time for some of their players to get going, but for the most part, it seems like they've been getting closer, and so it's only Sheffield. But at the same time, you need to get your first win somewhere, and hey, why not get it versus a team that you already knew in the championship? And I'm not necessarily going to touch on a lot of the goals in action. I mean, the red card did kind of just kill the game off, but it was 2-0 before that, so that is what it is. With Burnley, I think I maybe hit on everything. I do think, yeah, this was not only deserved. It's good to see them get the clean sheet. They were poor, but they still needed Sheffield were poor, but they still needed to perform, and they did. And with Sheffield, again, whether or not it's Higginbottom's issue or not, I don't think Chris Wilder is going to necessarily do much different. The person to let go or should resign is the person that allowed Indai and Sandberger to go without replacing them. The additions of Luke Thomas. Luke Thomas had a poor game in this one for the second goal. Hasn't really worked out. Hammer and McNakity and Sousa offer something on the ball, but they just haven't really shown the physicality yet in the league. Sousa has started to not be played anymore. I don't really understand that. I think Sousa is one of the better players, at least on the ball, and they just, especially when McDermott Burnley went out of the game. That's like your outlet to just go long at, where he can maybe hold the ball up or knock it down with his head, and they just lost any ability to play out of being pressed. And Burnley were at the hard end, just from the get go. I think the first goal comes from Burnley basically, outdueling a couple Sheffield players like two or three times in a row. Like Anduni has a chance to lose the ball and he wins it like two times, like getting through a challenge before a cross comes in. It's just Sheffield were just out physical, outrun, out everything. So that's not really good for them, and it's just, I don't really know if structure. I mean, they obviously they're a mess, because you don't really know what they're trying to do, but what they're trying to press, their shape. So maybe Router can come in and change the structure a little bit, but they look really poor. And again, it's a side that has lost 8-0, lost 5-0 to Arsenal. So um, it is what it is. And then with Burnley, getting their first win, all eyes go to Luton and to see what they would do, because a lot of people had positive thoughts on them. They got their first win last week versus Crystal Palace, and Luton were trounced, losing 3-1 to Brentford. Brentford had some stats in this that I had never seen from them before. 500 plus passes. Something they had so much of the ball. Brentford usually don't do that with the ball. And I asked Jeremy what happened here. They also had 27 shots, only six on target, but they had 70% of the ball, and 530 passes. There you go. And it's just, was it playing with Godos and Janelt, are they better in possession? Is it just Malpai being better at holding up the ball? And he said it was a little bit of that, but also it was really just really sitting back and just soaking in pressure and allowing Brentford to have the ball. But that said, Brentford have not been able to do this pretty much. Anytime I've been kind of covering their games for the last couple of seasons, they've struggled a little bit in possession. And here, you don't have a Jensen. They have a who's who of people that are unavailable. Speaking of teams that like Brighton and Newcastle, Brentford are suffering from that too. No Damsgaard, no Jensen, no Rico Silva, no Nathan Collins here, no Kevin Shota, no Aaron Hickey, and no Ivan Toney, but they at least maybe get him back soon. So, you're playing an 18-year-old in Yarmouk, coming in, and man, did he have a couple really bright moments. So, if you're a Brentford fan, I think one thing that Jeremy kind of said to him or said to me is he's really just kind of enjoying the season because for the most part it seems like it helps because of the competition for maybe the bottom places. They're not necessarily going to be in any danger, so they have some room now to kind of experiment a little bit, and maybe we're starting to see Thomas Frank do that. Yamaluke getting some playing time. I like this Olakibe player that they have. He's only 18 or 19. Apparently Lewis Potter came in and had a really good cameo in the second half, and he's basically responsible for the third goal that kills the game. Miles Pert Harris is apparently some England U21 kid who's 6'2". And he's made some headlines at the youth level. Apparently, he got to see some game time here, and Sam Godos, he was a Burnley player last season, and then his contract ended. They've decided to bring him back, and either full time fullback or wingback or as a sub. He gives them a little dimension too. He plays a role in their first goal, and Ben Mee is back, and really a lot of it, a lot of the compliments when you look at Burnley, Brentford. I keep saying that is Christian Norgard, who is just he's a really good holding player, not just good defensively. He's got a really good eye for a pass. He's good at spraying the ball around, and he's I'm pretty sure Denmark are going to be in Euros. He's going to be a player that a lot of people are going to highlight, to be honest, and maybe that'll be like the one negative to Denmark. I guess being in Euros is more people might actually look at him as like the next after Tony the next player to maybe poach off Brentford. Uh, and maybe the one negative is Flecken could still be a little shaky. But this game was, it took a while for Brentford to get going. It is worth kind of saying that. Not a lot of action happened in the first half. Luton were very, very compact, and maybe it kind of took someone like Ben Mee to actually continue his run, and basically he helped create the first goal where there's a cross went in, and Ben Mee kind of challenged it almost like a striker spot. I guess a little bit like Harry Maguire was trying to do. And, just his kind of presence, created a little danger where, Maupay was able to get the first one in, and then Ben-Mee, scored the second one a little bit more conventional with a corner kick, getting the header. And then 2-0, that kind of, felt like that was maybe gonna be enough, and then out of nowhere, uh Jacob Brown, get one back, to make it 2-1. There was the only shot, on goal at that point. You're wondering, maybe the keeper could have done a little bit better, but he didn't. But, quickly, Brentford were able to get the third with a really nice play by again, Lewis Potter kind of, splitting in a couple players. Uh, and then he takes basically 3 shots. He keeps kind of, coming back to him. Shannon Baptiste has since come in, and he shows some pretty good, ball security. Yeah, he basically has a nice little glide on the ball to get out of danger, and then he finds I think Lewis Potter again. He has another shot, and then the rebound falls to Baptiste. Baptiste kind of basically has a tap in, and so that kind of that was the game, and there you go. I mean, I do think it's interesting how, the Everton game when Brentford, lost, I don't know, 3-1 wasn't that long ago, where they were just out physically dominated completely, and you look at Luton, you're wondering if maybe the same could happen here, and no. So Brentford have done well to, I guess, fix that up a little bit, and just again, maybe it was because Everton were actually pressing them a little bit more, but it feels like with Janelt and Godos coming in, who aren't really fullbacks by trade. Janelt is a midfielder. Godos is kind of like a number 10 kind of player, but he's good on the ball. He's not going to be necessarily pressed into making mistakes. They've gotten better at the buildup, and they've gotten better at just kind of, keeping the ball and moving it a little bit. And you saw it in the passing numbers. I don't care if it's versus air, for Brentford to get 500 passes completed with 70% of the ball. That's good for them, and hopefully that'll be something that we see in other teams going forward. And one thing you can maybe praise Thomas Frank for is he does this weird thing where if he's playing against a team he respects, essentially he's not going to say that, but that's essentially what it is. He'll play basically a back where he'll do a 3-5-2 kind of formation, and then versus against like these other teams, he likes having that third attacker, so he goes back to a 4-3-3, uh, and it's worked up here. It showed up that changed in the last. He did it last season as well. That's been a good change for them, and it showed up here as well. And then again with Luton Town. It was only a 2-0 game in the 70th minute mark, but, until that point, they hadn't really gotten a shot, off. So I think it is what it is. And then I'll move on to Everton and Nottingham. For some reason, anytime Nottingham's on TV, other than for Brighton, they're never really a fun watch. It took until like I don't know, maybe the 80th minute for them to even have a shot on goal. Everton, no Calvert Lewin, but Beto got a start, and Beto had a couple misses where you wonder, well, he needs to do a little bit better here, and, it seemed like was this going to end basically another 0-0 game, kinda like, Crystal Palace and Nottingham a couple weeks ago, and, we get actually a pretty good goal, from Dwight McNeil, and, it's fitting. Sean Dyche, former player at Burnley, he's come in to Everton and brought him with him, and, it's been sometimes you do that just happens. A former player just kind of, bails you out, and that's what happened here. It's a really good goal, to be fair to him, and, Beto back screwed up, no Calvert-Lewin. You're wondering how Everton were going to score, and not only that, they get a much needed win where just, I think they're just a point away from getting out of danger, and it seems like they're averaging almost, a win every, 3 or 4 games, so they can do that. Again, it doesn't feel like they're going to be close to the other teams, and, it did feel like they were close to doing something last week versus Man United. They just weren't able. They had a lot of shots, just not a lot on target. So here, they only had 12 shots and only 3 on target, but at least they made the first one count. Dwight McNeil earlier in the game also had a decent effort that was cleared off the line. He beat the keeper, but he wasn't able to beat. I think it was Mario or Muriel. coming back and doing a good defensive duty. And then Pickford made the saves when he needed to. Just Nottingham Forest were poor, and given how they may be unlucky or upset at how the Brighton game turned out. You have the game at your place, and it was surprising just how poor they were. It is good that they get Felipe back. That can maybe help out with them. I mean, but Steve Cooper at the end was complaining about not getting a PK, and I think I've seen people. Yeah, I think I've seen people. I guess agree with that. That maybe there was a foul in the on a corner kick, but at the same time, you spent 200 some million on this squad, and you can't manage a shot, 75 minutes into the game at your own ground. That's more on your part than anything else. And they've got some players that I feel like they offer a little bit more on the ball. They're just not getting playing time, like someone like Dominguez. So I just it is what it is. And then West Ham and Crystal Palace ends 1-1. A goal from Kudus, and then Oates and Edward. Edward had a couple efforts before this. Finally made the first one count. Palace look rough without Eze, and unfortunately they're going to be without him for a little bit. The other lineup story was no, they're going to be without Decore for the rest of the season, unfortunately, because of what happened with him. I think they did say Achilles. So, who are they going to play? Someone Jefferson Lerma is one kind of a DM spot. Are they just going to make a single pivot? Are they going to do him and Will Hughes and someone else? And they did Chris Richards, and this was he played this game this position in the second half versus Nottingham Forest. I remember that, but he it's only his second game I guess starting in the league, and no Decore. This is maybe a way for him to get some consistent game time because, to be honest, he did really well. 73% pass accuracy could get better at 56 touches, 5 for 6 ground duels, 6 for 7 aerials, 2 interceptions, and 5 tackles. I mean, it's a center back, being asked to play just a little higher up, and he's good. So, maybe, you can't fit him and Mark Gahey on and, Anderson on all at the same time. At least, the backup option or a short-term option, this looks, doable. We'll have to see. Now, he needs to get better, with his pass accuracy. But this is gonna be exciting, I guess, for US fans. Maybe it'll get me to turn into a couple Crystal Palace games, because with no Eze, they did struggle a little bit to create some stuff. You have Elise. Elise can do a lot of fun things on the wing, but he's not the same kind of player. And Palace struggled. 9 shots, only 2 on target. West Ham, 9 shots, only 3 on target. West Ham started Jared Bowen at striker. That didn't really work out. No Antonio. I don't get why they didn't play the kid, Umbamba. So this game was kind of rough. I mean, with West Ham, you get Mo Kudus to score again, and hey, bringing him in has been the right call because he scored not just timely goals, different in different ways. So you at least get that. But this game was just kind of a typical typical game to be honest. There's just a whole lot of bonker stuff that happened in the other games. This is just kind of the reason why I'm ending off with this. And I did want to try to quickly get this show in before the Tuesday games and the Wednesday games because that would have been just too much to do. It wasn't easy, but it wasn't Thanksgiving this week, so it was easier for me to spend more time on Sunday than not. So I'm glad I was able to kind of get this off on Tuesday and not Wednesday. And I'll be back next Tuesday or Wednesday to talk about just a quick rundown of what happened, in the midweek, and then it's a big Saturday again as well. And so until then, you stay squatting and stop recording.